A special meeting of the Board of Trustees of the McAllen Independent School District will be held Friday, March the 9th, 2018, beginning at 4 p.m. in the boardroom/administration building of the McAllen Independent School District at 2000 North 23rd Street, McAllen, Texas. At this meeting, there may be discussion and action by the board on the items and subject listed as follows. Item 1, call the meeting to order. Item 2, the presentation and discussion of the self-funded employee benefit plan. And item 3, adjournment. At 4:01, we will open our meeting. Dr. Gonzalez.
Well, actually, before you start, Mr. President, I want to officially recluse myself. I have a conflict, so I'll be not participating in today's meeting.
Trustee Conrad Alvarado will be recusing himself from the meeting for
Can you wait outside and not go to the track meet? We'll let you know when it's over.
potential conflict of interest. Dr. Gonzalez.
Yes, sir. At this time, I'd like to turn the floor over to Mr. Miller to discuss our self-funded employee benefit plan along with Andy Silva. Mr. Miller.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to welcome everybody to our presentation today and discussion about McAllen ISD's self-funded employee benefits plan. So I'd like to take a quick moment, go around the table, and also the chairs over here to introduce everybody, if you would. So introduce yourself and your title, please.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Lorena Garcia, and I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Business Operations.
Marco Suarez, Board of Trustees.
Debbie Alicera on the board.
Jay Gonzalez, Superintendent.
Tony Forina, McAllen ISD School Board.
San Saldeva Jr., Trustee, McAllen Board of Trustees.
Andres Silva, Director of Benefits.
And Todd Miller, Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources.
Tiffany Booker, Clinical Account Consultant from Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Leo Aguirre, Consultant, Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Cindy Souza, I'm the Director of Account Management for Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas.
McAllen ISD for Payment Integrity, Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Roger Gapser, Employee Benefits Consultant for the district.
Jesse Muniz here with Value Risk Consulting. Javier Leon, Associate with Value Risk Consulting.
Bobby Arito, on-site Blue Cross Blue Shield rep.
Rita Igueras, account representative for Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Texas.
Julie Lynn, Senior Client Consultant for Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Thank you.
Welcome all.
Okay, two people behind you, Ms. Scow.
Bruce Scow, McAllen AFT, I represent the employees.
Hi, I'm Diane Hernandez. I'm with the Monterey newspaper.
Well, thank you, everybody, for coming today. Our benefit plan impacts nearly every element listed in Goal 2's people development and strategy to attract and retain high-quality staff of our strategic plan. For example, customer service and community interaction, financial literacy, communication strategy, leadership, staffing, new hires, retention, succession planning, recruitment, and, of course, safe work environment. So today's guests will be making presentations concerning American Healthcare. Mr. Brent Strokes will be here soon. Blue Cross Blue Shield, I'd ask them to come to the table first, if you don't mind. Ms. Cindy Sosa, and they'll be talking about our medical dental benefits. And then finally, Valley Risk Consulting, Mr. Roger Garza. So I would ask everybody to keep their presentation for American Healthcare and Blue Cross to 30 minutes, including questions and answers if you can. I know we have a lot to get through today. Each group will be reporting on plan utilization and other plan information. So, Mr. Sosa, I'll turn it over to you for Blue Cross Blue Shield.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this afternoon. I know it's Friday and you probably are already ready for the weekend, but thank you for allowing us to be here to speak with you this afternoon. Blue Cross has been with the school district since 2010, and again, we truly appreciate the confidence that you have placed in us to be your medical plan administrator. As you know, you've seen the healthcare industry has been a key topic nationwide. Employers are facing a lot of challenges. They're facing a lot of challenges with the U.S. healthcare system. One, it being costly. Two, it being very confusing. And then the third is, in general, our population can be very unhealthy. So as Blue Cross Blue Shield, your medical plan administrator, our goal and our role is to continue to work with the district, Mr. Sylvan especially, to make sure that we find ways to try to decrease your claim spend. So today what we're going to do is we've got a high-level presentation that's going to talk about your plan performance on a quarterly review basis, and then some ways that we can help manage your claim spend. So I'll turn it over to Julie.
Thank you. First, what we want to do is look at per employee per month, because that's how you budget, right? So first, we're going to look at the Rio Grande Valley public entities. We selected a benchmark just for you all. And what we saw is they paid $396 per employee per month. Then what we did is we looked at McAllen ISD, and we see that McAllen ISD paid $386 per employee per month. And then the third bar, kind of in the middle, the smallest one, is at $379. It's the current budget, from what I understand, and it includes medical and prescription. So just note that that middle bar includes medical and prescription, but the Rio Grande Valley Public Entities and McAllen ISD, what we have access to at Blue Cross Blue Shield is the medical only. So with that said, we knew that it was increasing, right? So we wanted to see what it looked like year over year. So on the bottom right, you see a trend tree. What we do is we take the current PEPM at $386.20, and we subtract it from the prior year of $370.62. That did increase, and that increased at 4.2%, right? So that's that number on the right and the top. And then we take a look at what kind of setting are McAllen's members going to. Are they going in the hospital? Are they getting outpatient type of services, or just seeing their regular old doctor, right? And we see that the highest one for McAllen ISD is the outpatient at 18.8%. So that's the one that's increasing most, the cost driver here for McAllen. The other way that Blue Cross Blue Shield takes a look, we don't look at budgets because I know that's something that you all work on. We look at per member per month, what's spread the risk across every member in your population. So we saw that right now it's currently at $225.97. And we split up the high-cost claimants versus the non-high-cost claimants to see if there are any outliers. And what we selected as the high-cost claimant threshold is the $50,000 mark. And you see that blue bars are kind of increasing as you go along. With that said, we're going to go to the next page. Another thing that affects those dollars and numbers is, go ahead.
Oh, it's a question.
Oh, sorry. That was a question. Next one is risk. So we compared you to all Texas independent school districts, and we see McAllen at a 0.98, kind of in that middle of that range. But what I want to draw your attention to is how far you are from that big black line in the middle. We actually expect somebody of your risk to be higher than what you are today. So that's just something to keep in mind as we go through along the dollars here. The other thing that we were asked to look at is benefit design. So we took the basic plan, which is the one that most of McAllen's members are in. We mapped it month by month, so that's the basic plan there. And then we looked at the high plan, and what we see mostly is that the basic and high are growing farther apart. So what that signals to me is we want to do something to kind of align them so they kind of go in the similar directions. So what we did was we looked at plan designs from other Rio Grande Valley public entities, and we said, if you paid what the Rio Grande Valley public entities paid, what would that look like? So it means that you could potentially save about $379,000 if we use those kinds of benefit plans. And there's a lot of things and details in the benefit plan, so my colleague will be talking about that in a later page. This bottom one, just quickly, is an easy picture of that orange line is the outpatient. Again, that's your outpatient spend kind of more than your inpatient, your hospital visit, or your just regular visit there.
Julie, how do you define outpatient?
Outpatient could be an outpatient surgery, so a hospital could have an outpatient setting that doesn't have all the bells and whistles.
Okay.
And that's kind of what
These freestanding ERs,
they are also included in there.
they're also included in the outpatient?
Correct.
Okay.
Any outpatient facility as well. The inpatient is exactly, if they're admitted in the hospital, that's an inpatient. Anything outside of that they're not admitted is on the outpatient.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mr. President, question.
Yes, sir, Mr. Saliba.
Along these lines on this outpatient, what you're showing us on these charts are those medical items that are covered under the policy only, right? Not anything that's been presented to you that may not have been paid for or covered.
Right.
Right, so these are only those items that were covered under the plan, the employee submitted proof of claim, and that you actually paid on these?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
So with that said, that's outpatient. We're going to talk about something else, which is disease categories, right? What we wanted to show you is this green bar are all the Rio Grande Valley public entities, and you see the highest one is actually neoplasms, or what we call cancer, right, to put it simply. But for McAllen, we're seeing something really different. Your number one is actually circulatory. So that's really different for the population here. But as you know, with cancer, you don't know who's going to get cancer, what kinds, or how much it's going to cost. So I just wanted to note that's how different McAllen is. But with that, we have our clinical account consultant here who's really well versed in disease categories. So she's going to tell you a little bit more about those.
So what I basically want to do is just let you know what we're seeing in your population when it comes to the circulatory and endocrine space. You see that they're accounting for 22% of your total per member per month spend. Let's just start at the far left with circulatory. If you look, you'll see the dark blue, that was last year. So although your spend did go down from the prior reporting period to now, you're still well above the Rio Grande Valley benchmark in that. So who's driving the cause? 45% of your circulatory spend is due to what we call non-high cost claimants. So those are people that are generating less than $50,000 worth of claims. Those are your people that have hypertension or high cholesterol. Now, the bulk of your circulatory spend, the other 55, is for high cost claimants. These are your people that are having heart attacks, having strokes, or having really severe cerebrovascular diseases. These are your people that are requiring inpatient stays. They're requiring very costly surgical procedures while they're in the ICU and things of that nature.
Quick question, is it
Yeah.
55% of the cost or 55% of the people?
The people.
That make up that 22%.
Yes, they make up that 22%. And I took a total list of all of your high-cost claimants that had over 50,000, and I dove into the top 10. 4 of those were due to circulatory. You've got heart failure, 1 heart attack, and 2 valve disorders. All had very lengthy stays, all cost a lot of money this year. The good news is that a lot of your high-cost claimants are preventable. So when we look at preventing them, what we do is come up with ways that we can promote healthier lifestyle habits, proper nutrition, exercise, so that what you want to do is to capture them when they just have hypertension. Keep them there before they have a catastrophic event, before they have a stroke. Make sure they're taking their medication. So we have all of those programs here. I won't go too much into it now, but I just want you to know that this is something that we can work on. Endocrine, the next one. This is also driven by high-cost claimants. These are your individuals that have nutrition or metabolic disorders. A lot of them are going to require long-term treatment, so they're just going to be on costly medication. A good example of that is your diabetic population. I can go into any more of them if you want me to. I've really, for the sake of time, I did the top 2, but I can keep going if there's any questions. I don't mind.
The top in the circulatory, you said there were 300,000 plus, is that what you said?
Of the top 10, there were 4 that had a circulatory condition.
Okay.
And I can give you their spend, I have it.
Don't we have the catastrophic insurance that caps those at some point?
330,000.
330. And how many of those are we allowed, or how many of those can we?
It's per
Unlimited?
It's per claim unlimited.
Okay,
So you had 1 that was over 300,000.
I see. Okay.
And that was your chronic heart failure. And he was actually needing a heart transplant. Not quite there yet. So this will probably be somebody that'll come up again next reporting period.
Any further questions? Thank you, ma'am.
Right, so the next page, what we did is we took all the accounts.
I'm sorry, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
What's neoplasms? Can you
Cancer.
And how many of those do we have?
How many
Below the benchmark.
Right, how many do you have?
How many cancers do you have in your among your high-cost claimants? Just a second. You have 9. Last period, you had 14. So there was a decrease there.
And last period being,
It was November 2015 to October 2016.
there's a reason I'm asking, I'll share that with anybody on the board if they want to know. But thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, so for the next part, if we're all ready, on page 6, we have the keys to top performance for McAllen ISD. What we did on the analytics side is we took at all the accounts that we saw were efficient, so that we saw that of the risk population, we saw that dollars were lower, and we saw what was kind of what did they have in common, right? So one was they all work on all these 4 boxes at the same time. One was a plan design strategy. 2 is consumerism. Try to focus on consumerism, things like full high deductible health plan changes or call penalties. Network solutions, they partnered closely with hospitals in the region. And then the 4th one is wellness and pharmacy. So they did things like enhance case management or integrate their pharmacy with the medical. And then last is improve access, like in telemedicine to the members. So those are the things that those top performers did. And so what Tita and Andy have been doing is really trying to figure out how to do something that fits McAllen's population here. So that's me and Tita here.
Okay, and we have on the next slide, we have the sample benefit plan design changes. This is only a sample, just keep in mind that January the 1st, we made some changes to the out-of-pocket and under the basic plan, and that's the only one that we're gonna show today. We're recommending the out-of-pocket on the out-of-network, and just if we were to move it, and this is just an example, if we were to move it from the 9,000 individual limit to the unlimited, there is a savings in there, and the plan will be saving about $36,000. On the deductibles, and this will be in the e-network, and this for the basic plan, if we were to move from $1,000 to $1,500, there will be a savings of about $95,000. On the specialty copay, currently we have the same copay for the primary care physician and the specialist. If we were to split and do primary care physician, keep at 30 and move up to 45 for the specialty, we will save about $33,000. And the emergency room copay increase it from $100 to $200. That will be a $25,000 overall, $191,000 savings. Yes, sir.
Okay, I have 2 questions. Number 1 is, how often do y'all analyze our policies?
Constantly, we're working together with Andy. And
Okay,
we
and the
review
reason
it.
why I asked that is for a long time, our out-of-pocket and our network deductible were the same prior to that. Is that normal practice for an insurance company to do that?
And not the insurance company, but the groups, because you want to keep, stay within the standards in the area. Because most districts, what they look at, you start losing employees going elsewhere because they have lower deductibles or lower co-insurance.
But my question is, usually, when you have an insurance company and they tell you to do in-network, it's because, obviously, it's less expensive to go with someone in-network. I might be wrong.
No.
I'm not very familiar with the
No,
insurance.
that you are correct.
So what incentive would I have as an employee if my deductible was the same to go in-network or out-of-network?
Your copay and the patient portion is higher.
No, but it was the same.
Okay.
We recently changed it, but it's always been the same, which means I would go to a doctor, I would choose a doctor that wasn't in network, and it would definitely cost the district a lot more money.
On the other, okay.
I'll address one of the benefits to do that, is when you choose an in-network provider and you're paying your doctor bill, that provider can't come back and balance bill you. They are required to accept Blue Cross's rate. So if you go to an out-of-network provider and let's say Blue Cross reimburses them our allotted rate for whatever procedure you want, and your provider says, that's not enough for me, you are responsible for paying that balance, not Blue Cross. So that is why we steer members towards in-network.
So if deductible was higher for out-of-network, we would steer the employees to try to stay within network, am I correct?
98 or 99% of all of your claims are staying in network. There's majority of your members at the district are staying in network. So really, out-of-network has not been too much of an issue at all for the district.
Andy, so only 1% of all of our employees are out-of-network?
Are in network.
Are in network?
In network, yes, sir.
99%?
99%.
Yes, sir. And to your point, this was actually something Valley Risk Consulting did bring to our attention. They said, you should have it different. But for us, I guess luckily, we didn't have a high utilization out of network where it was causing us an issue. And the data and the reporting has all shown that our employees are staying within network.
What is our membership number right now?
We have 3,000.
Employees, but the average membership.
I think I have it on here.
We have covered under the plan, we have 3,300,
That's family.
more or less.
That's in,
Employees. Employees.
Do you have the total?
Is this it? Membership?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, including your dependents, is that what you're wanting?
Yes.
Average membership, 5,722.
How many?
For the 5,722 for the reporting period that we're discussing right now.
right, okay. Wait, say it again, it's 5,000, how many?
722.
And the employees was 3,350,
About 330. Average.
3,330?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I have spouse and dependents.
Can
if
you tell me
like.
that? Yeah, the
Sure.
spouses.
So your spouses are at 650, and dependents about 1,700.
Okay, thank you.
So if 1% of our members are going outside of the network, is our network too big? Have we cast too wide of a net?
The one thing that we look at, so our network is our network. It's a Blue Cross, we own our network, so it's proprietary. So we manage our network as closely as we can. Saying that about 98, 99% is what we're averaging that are utilizing our network, you're also averaging about 68, 69% discounts. So your foundation of our network is pretty solid. What we want to do is we want to start steering more of your employees and their dependents to the lowest cost facility. So we have a lot of our products and programs that incentivize them to go to the lowest cost facility, or we can tier some things to go to the lowest cost facility to get them to not just go to the hospital for an MRI. They should go to a freestanding facility for an MRI. That's going to be cost difference. Other things that are going to be cost difference depending on the site of care.
Do we have those incentives now?
No. There is a cost to some of those programs, and for right now, we don't have those available, or they're not offered to the district right now.
And if an employee goes to a freestanding MRI versus one at the hospital, the plan is only going to pay a certain amount either way. So if they go to the hospital, they could get stuck with a higher bill, kind of like going to an out-of-network, or no?
The employee will have so if they go to the hospital, there's going to be probably let's just say they go for an MRI and the doctor wants them to go into the hospital for an MRI. It could, let's say it's $3,000. If they go to a freestanding, it could be $1,000. So there's a huge cost difference. There's going to be a cost difference for that employee because it could be co-insurance and deductible towards that. And then the district picks up the difference because it's like an 80-20 type of situation. So the district's going to pay more if that employee goes into the hospital for an MRI. So that's the education. The foundation of our network is pretty solid, but now what we're doing with our other public entities is we're steering them to the lowest cost facility.
So who does those negotiations? I'm sorry, Sam. Is it, do you do the negotiations or do we do the negotiations?
To the providers,
Yes.
we do.
It's their network.
It's our network, yeah.
Go ahead, no, you're first, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Using the scenario you just gave in referencing the incentives, can you explain to us how, by having an incentive, that same scenario, how that would work? Again, going into the hospital, you use that scenario, it's $3,000 and doctor's directing there, versus going to an off-site or freestanding for $1,000. How would that benefit the employee, and what's the incentive to make that work?
So what we're beginning to understand is that with managed care, the employees are not really understanding the true cost of healthcare. It is expensive. They have their co-payments, they have their benefit plan, and it's restricted with the Affordable Care Act. So what we're doing is there's a program, what we call Benefit Value Advisor, and then we collectively put it with our member rewards. What happens with our benefit advisory, with our BVA, our benefit advisory, what they do is they'll call in, and a lot of times if we do it at mandatory, it's kind of a stick and a carrot. The stick would be that they need to call in order, if they got an MRI, anything like that, that it's a procedure, they need to call in. If they don't call in, then there's a penalty. The more you put a penalty on there, the more they're going to stick by calling. That benefit value advisor will monitor them as far as where are you going for your MRI. I'm going to get an MRI at the hospital. They can then educate them on there's other facilities that are near you that it's a freestanding and it costs less. They can even make the appointment for them. And
They being the advisor?
The advisor,
Thank you.
make the appointment, have all that done. Now, if you connect it with our member rewards program, what that happens, if they switch to a lower cost facility, they actually get a cash reward. What we've seen is like the stick and the carrot. And the savings, there's a return on investment because the cash reward can be $50, $100, depending on the procedure. But you'll be able to see the savings by moving them to the lowest cost facility. Again, switching over that $3,000 to the $1,000, you're going to have that $2,000 difference, and you give the employee a $50 incentive. Their mindset is going to say, wow, if I keep going to the lowest cost facility, I can really benefit from this. So you're changing the behavior of the employees. But
you're educating them as well.
Exactly.
And I didn't mean to cut you off. The penalty, you said that if they don't do the calling in to the benefit advisor, what's the penalty to the
It can be whatever you want. Like right now, Blue Cross, as an employee, we have a penalty that if we don't call in, we get charged like a $250 penalty on that. Some don't like to do that. They don't like to penalize their employees. So we don't have to do that, but it's kind of what we like to do is put the program in maybe the first year, get them educated, and then see how the education, see how many is engaging in it. And then the second year, we can put a penalty. So it's more education on the first year.
And so in the example again that you gave, the way it would work, the penalty is that there would be the copay, any deductible if it's applicable, and in addition to that, if they didn't call in their advisor, there'd be that, as an example, the $250. Obviously, we set the amount if we wanted to do it.
Exactly, you can do a penalty.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. President.
Quick question, thank you, Sam. Quick, you talked about the example in-hospital MRI and outpatient freestanding. What if the hospital says, we're not going to charge you your 20%? How do we enforce a penalty to the hospital? You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah, mainly what happens with our network providers is they'll call and make sure that, because that's a conflict of their contract.
I understand, but how do you,
So,
you don't know?
yeah, it's pretty much we'll find out from word of mouth, or we'll see, something like that. But we can't tell whether they're not charging them or not.
Does that happen in our district?
It used to with one particular facility that was out of network. They were incentivizing our employees that way. I've heard it now with I don't know if I should mention the type of facility, but a certain facility that also again is out of network. And what I'm hearing from our employees is that, well, they told us not to worry about that part of it.
Yeah. And if it's out of network, there's not a whole lot we can do about
And y'all are
it.
familiar.
Yeah. The one thing that we need to do is we need to educate your all's employees more, is the fact that they need to understand this is the district's money. It's not Blue Cross's money.
I understand.
And when they know it's the district's money, then they'll get a little bit more aware of what's happening. Because if they think it's Blue Cross, they're just like,
Yeah,
let Blue Cross pay for it.
I would beg to differ. I think our employees
No, they're conscious of that, I'm
are
sure.
very much aware.
Or at the least, we believe that they are. But you can never keep educating them enough on
Yeah.
that particular
I think they know it's beyond the district's money. I think they know it's their money, because the last two Decembers, there hasn't been that rebate check that we've been given
Sure.
the last couple of years. So, that's a
And
good
there's a
little
reason
chunk
for
of
that.
change, yeah.
And I run across that with my employees, and I pick up the phone and say, hey,
Yeah.
you guys, and then I prohibit my people from going to that facility anymore. But I'm a lot smaller than the district, but we gotta have a hotline or something.
Right, right.
Thank you.
Now, along that lines, you mentioned that about educate. So up to this point, has there been an engagement by Blue Cross Blue Shield to come into the district and have conversations with our employees during a renewal period so that they could become better aware or better informed about certain aspects of the plan? Has that happened in the last?
Yes, we do have Hobie that is here on site, and along with Andy, they have been doing that communication to the employees, holding lunch and learns, and going, campus by campus, and providing information to your employees and educating them.
If we could maybe have from Mr. Silva as to what campuses and the frequency that those took place, so we have a better understanding if that's, because it doesn't line up with not being informed, and yet there was the public, the individual discussions with staff. So,
We usually get an email from Mr. Miller or Andy or somebody that they're going to a particular campus or having a particular workshop and stuff like that, so yeah. And it's pretty frequent.
it is, but I think if we get a chart, we can better, because, we get the notification and we move on as with our lives.
And you go to every bathroom in the district and you see something there also, so.
Yeah. But I think the key is the engagement. If this is a concern that Blue Cross is articulating to us, we see it differently. But I think by seeing exactly what campuses, how many individuals participated, because we now know the number of members, and if that's, even though we may be having them, but the number is relatively low, then maybe what we're thinking may be something different.
And you can break it down to campus level, right?
I can. There's a report we can give you.
Yeah.
And related to that, yes, we have our readers, we call them our restroom readers. We replace those monthly. So there has been an education campaign, and most recently, I've been going to all the campuses. We're finalizing the departments. I've gotten to at least one so far, to educate them, to reinforce that this is a self-funded program, and here are some of the tools that are available. As Ms. Sosa mentioned, there's some tools available right now that our employees can use to, on their own, find the lowest price providers. But they have to be able to know where the information is and to navigate it, and then to be able to use it. So we've been doing that. Ms. Yarito, as it was mentioned, she's our on-site Blue Cross rep. When she first came on board, we went out to all the campuses and introduced her, made sure the staff was aware that she's available, help them with any kind of information they might need, obviously questions, concerns, but also how to navigate, the tools that are available to them. So we've definitely been stepping that up a little more here recently to make sure our employees are aware.
And are those meetings mandatory? I mean, or you guys show up and some staff show up, or is everybody required to go?
They were made mandatory. I personally can't tell you that I policed that. Through the assistant superintendent's office, they coordinated them for me, and I showed up, and obviously staff was there. I'm pretty sure it was mandatory when I was there. They were making announcements, you need to be here, so I think I can safely say that the campus made it mandatory, yes, sir.
And at the high school, I believe you parked yourself there all day, for example, so when the teacher...
Depending on the campus and their schedule, I would be there all day so that they could all come to a presentation.
Well, obviously, our folks are aware and they are engaged, because 99% is what I'm hearing earlier, we're within the network, or staying network, which is impressive. I can tell you our
Yes, sir.
company, it's not that. But what does that relate to as far as total claims during the period that we're talking about?
During that period, the total claims paid.
Are you looking at what is paid
13.
for the district?
13 million?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we have about 15 million, it kind of goes up and down each month, but 13 to 15 million.
13 to 15 million.
But I think his question is in-network versus out-of-network.
Right.
Actually, my question is how many claims were made? Are you saying 15 million claims?
No, no,
Or-
no.
No, I want claims, actual claims. But thank you, that's a good question.
I don't think we have that in.
We don't have that.
We can get that for you, we don't have that available right now.
So, but now we know per month it's 13 to 15 million dollars worth of claims.
Per month. This
Per
is for
year?
the year.
That's
Per
the
year.
whole year.
But we don't know yet, and you're gonna get that to us as the number, that totals, number of claims, right?
Yes.
Thank you. And if you could tie it back to this chart, it would be very nice too, so we know where those claims are coming from.
Sure.
Thank you.
Could I ask a question? When you were talking about in-network, so if someone goes to hospital A or hospital B, if they're going and they're getting the same service, they should be charged the exact same amount, or they charge different amounts, but you will pay only a certain amount?
So each hospital has a different contract.
So if I go to hospital A and 40% of our employees are going to hospital A and they charge more, but hospital B, only 10% of our people are going there and they charge a lot less, how do we tell you, or how do we fix that so we get, I mean, how is that, I assume that if everyone's in network, everyone's like, if you're gonna play ball with us, you're all gonna charge the same. An MRI is gonna be $1,000, $1,000, $1,000, $1,000, we're gonna reimburse you $1,000, $1,000. But if hospital A says, oh, we're special, we're gonna charge you $2,000, but our insurance is saying we're only gonna pay $1,000, you decided $1,000, so we're stuck paying the extra $1,000, where if they went to hospital B and they only charged $1,000, you covered $1,000, so we don't have to pay anything.
That's a good question. So we've been working very closely with Andy on the network. The hospital that they are going to, majority of them are going to, is the lowest cost facility for the district. So we've looked at that, we've looked at tiering some of the other hospitals. Julie has done an analysis and looked at whether we moved one of the other hospitals as the first tier that we would steer them to, and we couldn't get to a savings that really was beneficial for the district. So we looked at a lot of analysis, we've worked with Andy on that. But the hospital that is the number one hospital that they're going to, the employees that are going to, is the lowest cost facility.
Yeah.
Is there a big difference, because you're saying you have different contract prices with the different hospitals? Is there a big difference in those contract prices?
That I'm not in network, so I can't say.
Can we
Who's here in
say,
network?
Nobody in the team?
do we have the ability to say, if you go to hospital A, which is the most expensive hospital, your portion will be more? If you go to B, which is the one that we recommend you go to, your portion will be less. Do we have the
Yes.
ability to say that?
And one of the new things that we're looking at is a new network solution that's going to be effective January of 2019. We call it the flexible network, and it's something similar to that Mr. Silva has been wanting us to do, but I think this is going to fit the need. It's a custom tiered network, and what we would do is we would identify the hospitals and the ambulatory surgical centers that are the lowest cost but high quality. We can tier them into buckets based on your benefit structure. And that would be, we would do an analysis, we would identify that, and we'd get with Mr. Sylvan and his team to see how those benefits would be structured, and then do an analysis. That could be effective January 2019. So it's kind of similar to what you're talking about.
What's the price difference?
Based on benefits, where we would steer them.
Compared to our, you were showing us the sample or the basic plan here. I mean, I'm assuming we have like a basic, premier, deluxe level, Are we gonna have that same plan for the flex plan?
You, no, go ahead. No, so we would need to identify, we haven't done that yet, to identify which providers we would put on the tier 1, which would be the one we want to steer all the employees to. So we would have to do an analysis based on what we would identify those providers to be.
But tier 1 would be a less expensive package.
For the employee.
Tier 2 would be a middle of the road.
But not for us.
But when you look at, we would know what those contracts are for those particular providers. Like I'm saying, right now, the number one hospital that the employees are going to is the lowest cost hospital. So we would steer that one to the benefit tier 1 so that it would be less out of pocket for the employee and it would be lesser out of pocket for the district.
But we don't have anything in play that said, so let's say we have 40 high-cost claimants. So let's say all 40 of those choose to go to the most expensive hospital here in McAllen. They all go to B. Well, then it's really skewed. Then we're way out of pocket. So there's no other system in place other than education to tell them, please don't go there?
So one of the other things that we're looking at, and I've provided Mr. Silva, it's the site of care as well. So what we've done is we've changed our medical policy on a certain specialty medication administration, which is the IV infusions and injectable therapy, because that's on the medical side. What we've done is we've changed our medical policy. If the district were to put this into place, that the member that needs this type of drug therapy would need to be able to just go as an outpatient to a provider setting and not into a hospital setting. If they were to go into a hospital setting, it would be denied. So that's our new medical policy. We've shared it with Mr. Silva. The thing is that if you all were to put that into place, we ask that you stick by it. Because if there is a member that does go into an inpatient hospital and they want to appeal it, we want to continue to deny it. If we don't, then really it's not going to help at all. They're going to get the same drug therapy at the provider setting as they would in the hospital. So we want to go ahead and put that into place. And again, it's if the district wants to do that. And so this is the first one. So we're really looking into other ways for us to look at a site of care so that we can put it in the benefits and be able to steer it in that way through the benefits. So we're in the process of looking at more and more of those.
So,
You had your hand up.
Thank you.
Yes.
You were discussing the scenario of tiered facilities, preferential tiered facilities. It's a great idea, but how do you overcome the physician-driven decision to send to a particular hospital, because hospitals and physicians now have proprietary contracts with each other, or associations, affiliations, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
How do you overcome the fact that your best facility is being driven, or isn't being driven by the doctors you want it to be driven by?
Yeah. That's a tough question. So.
What's the easy answer?
What's the $1 million answer?
No, I really can't answer that right now. So.
Okay, and we've talked about that for a few minutes, but is that a major factor in our spend? It's not, right?
I don't think so. I don't.
Not according to the numbers you have.
No, and we've looked at that, and we've looked at our network, and like I said, right now, I think it's a foundation that's secure, because you are getting 99% of the claims are staying in network at a 69% average discount. Where we need to start concentrating on are some of these high-cost claimants that Tiffany talked about, the circulatory. We have our disease management, our medical management. We can help them, and we coordinate with their provider. When we can start, and Tiffany can come up here, she's better at this because she's on the clinical side, but we can close those gaps in care, that if they are a diabetic and they're not getting their insulin on time, then they're going to have more chronic diseases. So we want to stop that. Tiffany, if you want to.
Right, I think you did really well.
Thank you.
I mean, I don't know
Ditto.
what more I could add.
What she said.
Yes.
Well, I think we need to talk about the programs that are in place to engage our employees, that as much as we try, y'all are finding that they're not engaging in these programs.
Right, okay. So we have a condition management program. What we do is we reach out to your members that have 5 core chronic conditions. So there are COPD, coronary artery disease, congestive heart failure, diabetes, and asthma. So we're not just reaching out to, we won't just reach out to you just because you have it. We're really identifying those members that have gaps in care. So by having a gap in care, it means that they're not adhering to evidence-based practice. So they're on their way to a complication. There is really low utilization of that program within McAllen.
Okay, so stop right there.
Please.
I'm sorry.
Why is that happening? Is it something that we're not doing? Is it something that you're not doing enough of?
It's a culture change.
Right.
How do
and
we fix that?
Well, what we've been doing is Hovey has come out and did lunch and learn sessions so that we're educating your employees that we have the programs, because a lot of times they might not be aware or they don't think they have a problem.
Okay, and has this been done like the past 6 months, the past year, the past 5
yeah.
years?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, since we started.
Oh, yeah.
What happens sometimes, and it's not just McAllen ISD, is when they see a phone call from Blue Cross, they think we're either going to sell something
Or charge them.
Yes.
I'm with you.
But what we're doing is we're reaching out to them so that we can help them.
Right.
It's a nurse, it's just wanted to, all of these programs are voluntary. We're not going to force them to get on, but we're wanting to educate them and get them. We even send letters.
Yes.
But even if they don't come on or talk to us, we are behind the scenes talking to their provider as well.
Right. That's what I was going to ask. So we can still intervene in that way.
Okay. Now, is there a particular district where, or a company which you've done this method and the numbers are much better
Yes.
than they are here?
And they're incentivizing their members to
That's not
participate.
what I wanted to hear,
Well,
Yeah, but
that
if you just gave them a portion of what you save, you'd still be way
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah.
that is,
But if I made to that point preliminarily, because this is a concept I really like, the incentives, I think that's what will get our employees to react. Preliminarily, legal says no. It says, how can we return money that's rightfully McAllen ISD and we're saving and it's our program? How can we return it to an employee? So we have some challenges there that if we really want to go down that road, we have to resolve.
If legal doesn't know why you can't, there has to be a way you can.
Is it done in other districts?
Yes.
Yes.
We should get a second opinion from our attorney.
It's done at other districts successfully, and
If they can't tell you exactly why
working
you
well for
can't,
them.
then there's got to be a way to do it.
And we will have, I mean, there's tons of reporting.
Larry, start reading, Larry.
She got my permission.
He's the attorney here, so he agrees, so let's do it.
Are there local districts that are doing that, or just in the state?
I'd have to get back with that. This is only district I have in the Valley.
I'm not familiar with local, but I'm familiar with other public entities, including school districts elsewhere that have these kinds of programs. Some of them with the Blue Cross connection, some of them separately, other vendors. And of course, their employees love it. And as far as the administrations are concerned, it's been working for them.
And let me just add, I have different accounts that I work with. You can get really creative with incentives. It doesn't just have to be, $100 gift card or premium credit. There are a lot of organizations now that are moving to, let's say if you have diabetes and you participate in the condition management program, you go through all your 5 phone calls, well then the company picks up the cost of their generic medications. They're more likely to take their medications if they're not paying for it. So that also helps in what we're trying to do with your population as well. You're trying to make sure they're complying. You want to make sure that they don't end up with a catastrophic event.
Yeah, no,
So you can get creative with it.
And kind of what you're saying, a good friend of mine works for a big hospital up in the Houston area, and then we get together and he had lost a lot of weight. He says, well, yeah, they have this incentive program. I think he got gifts, different type of things. because it's got his cholesterol under control, his everything.
Yeah.
So,
The companies get really good results with it. I mean, you totally improve your numbers from year to year.
And on that note, again, it's probably an area that we needed to promote it more. It's been there for years, but I've been doing more and more of this. We currently have an incentive program for our employees to get educated, to do a health risk assessment. I mean, you can speak to it probably better than I can. Health risk assessment, there's tools that they can get into, and even tracker, if they sync their tracker, all of those things generate points for them, and there's incentives for them just for taking a more active approach to their lifestyle. So we've been promoting that more and hopefully engaging them. So those things exist, and that's already built in. I mean, that's not something we have to do in addition to. It's just getting our employees to recognize that it's there, that it's good for them, and for them to take advantage of it.
So how is this, I'm sorry, Sam, go ahead. How is this message relayed to our members? Because I am a Blue Cross Blue Shield member through the University of Texas. My wife is a Blue Cross Blue Shield member through HEB. I am bombarded on a daily basis on Walktober, on NutriSlim, on, we're teaching you how to eat properly. I have the district email. When I go into the bathroom, I see it, and it's wash your hands, scrub 20 seconds. But are we communicating with people? You got me right here. Are we sending out an email to folks? Are we saying, at the university they encourage, hey, 10-minute break, go walk, build your steps. Are we doing that as a district and saying, here's an opportunity for us to incentivize?
More recently, I can tell you it was the face-to-face. So we were doing a lot of these emails. The feedback I was getting from our employees is, why do you keep sending me emails? You're sending them to me too quick, too soon. So we kind of staged back a little bit on emails. So now we're doing the face-to-face. We're continuing to do those posters. We've already discussed that we need to kind of get back into some of the emails, that maybe not the frequency. We used to do them every week, a weekly tip. They were all Blue Cross typically branded information. We'd borrow from them. They have some resources for us, and we'd send them every week.
How about you tell them bonus?
That might get
Click on it. Kind of like when they think you that mail, it looks like a check, but it's not.
So to answer your question, we've been trying different ways to get the messages out. We can always do better. So we'll keep at it.
Yeah.
Couple of things. Thank you, and it's great what you've been doing. Most folks, we get busy, and we see more than 4 or 5 lines. Suddenly it becomes a blur. I notice on our website we've increasingly are putting videos, and now we have Twitters and the like with little vignettes. Are we doing that, or do we provide hyperlinks so they can get to the Blue Cross Blue Shield? So sometimes, frankly, we get them from our company, our Blue Cross things, and I may not actually watch the video, but I'm listening to it as I continue to work. So are we doing those?
Yes, sir. To answer your question, yes, we actually moved into more of that than the wordiness of the emails. There were quick little snippets of, things you should know on this, and there's a link, and we actually load the information to our website, or we link it to where the information is. That way, they don't have to spend a lot of time reading through something that's of no interest to them. If they see this one, they can click on it, and it goes straight to that. So we definitely do that for the staff that has, obviously, emails, but then for the support staff who maybe don't have access, we typically have to send a hard copy. So we try and approach it from both ways.
Okay. Since we're talking about incentives, I kind of want to circle back around. Early on, you talk about preventable. A lot of these high costs were preventable conditions. And you mentioned exercise, nutrition, lifestyle changes, etc. Is that in some instances an incentivized option that's being provided, or how would that work in any of these plans, including that one you were mentioning that's coming in 2019?
The flex plan.
The flex plan. How would that be incorporated in that regard as far as an incentive, if at all?
It's not really shown as an incentive, but it is, you're changing behavior. So that would be the employer's focus on changing behavior. So rather than incentivizing, your focus is rather on participation.
Okay.
In, being educated about what your disease is, being compliant and things of that nature.
But you did mention that that you do have benefits advisor, and especially with those individuals that it doesn't seem like they're keeping up with their medications or their medical treatment follow-ups, that you are reaching out to them and talking about that. Are you also discussing some of these exercise, nutrition alike, or are you just discussing that they need to do certain things to get back to taking their medication and going back to the doctor visits as well, or both?
Yes, and that's two different phone systems. The benefit value advisors, they're really focusing on benefit steerage toward the lower cost alternatives. The clinicians that are talking to the members about their conditions, that's disease management. So they're going to be different.
Okay.
So what they're really doing is driving in on what their condition is. They're collaborating with their doctor. They're sending them resources to online stuff. We also have the capability of sending modules because there are people that don't like to talk on the phone. So you can do that at night, and the clinician can access the report to see if it was completed, if it needs to be done over again,
I got you.
and stuff like that.
Thank you.
Mr. Miller.
Mr. President, we got 55 minutes into this presentation, so we still got just a little over an hour to go. American Healthcare and Value Risk Consulting still to go, so great conversation. I just want to remind the board.
Thank you.
Can I ask one more thing before I forget? You said we had one claimant that went over the 320. How many high-risk claimants do we have, and what's the number? I know I'm looking at an old spreadsheet, and in 17 we had 40, and it was 5.8 million. What is it now?
You want to know how much they are how much they account for your total spend?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, for this reporting period, you have 40, and they're accounting for 35.7% of total paid.
And what's the dollar amount?
And the dollar amount.
5.9.
Yeah.
5.5 million?
5.5 million.
Ours is 5.9.
There is.
Oh, that's
We're
okay.
looking at a different
I'm
time
sorry,
period.
different
5.5, I'm sorry.
So it's pretty constant to that.
And the threshold was over the 50?
50,000.
And that's to date.
This reporting period is through October 27, incurred through October and paid through December.
Paid through December 2017.
Wow.
That's for the year.
It's
Pretty
been,
much paid for the
it's been
12 months.
consistent from 2015, 2016, 2016, 2017, 2017, 2018, and it's going to be consistent in 2018, 2019.
The amount, but what does change is the diagnoses that are accounting for that amount.
Okay, sorry.
All right.
The last thing we wanted to talk about, and maybe our time is up, but I know that there's some concerns of our claims payment integrity, what we do. We're just not there to write claims, write checks and pay every claim. And Matt is our divisional vice president of our payment integrity. I don't know if we have just a few minutes that he can just tell you just briefly what we do with our claims. Matt?
Yeah, sure. So thank you. So obviously, plan design, benefits design is very important in how the claims are submitted to us, and of course the outcome of the spend. But an equal pieces. So as soon as that benefit design and the plan is set in place, our job is to make sure that when a claim is submitted to us, we pay it accurately. So we pay what's to the design, what's to our contracts, what's to our policies. We don't pay more, we don't pay less. So we pay what's agreed to. And there's several things that we do to ensure that. And on the slide, there's kind of that prepayment and postpayment. And once that claim has been provided by the service provider, and as soon as it's about to be submitted, we have clearinghouses that the provider submits their claim through the clearinghouse, which electronically comes to our system. And that clearinghouse has a set of edits inside the clearinghouse, which looks for things like, is the claim clean, does it have the right fields on it, CPT codes that are required, so on and so forth. Once it passes through that, it goes through a couple auditing softwares, and these auditing softwares look for things like bundling or unbundling of charges, medical unlikely edits, modifier usage is accurate, a lot of coding and clinical things that it looks for from a decisioning standpoint of yes, go ahead and pay it, or no, it's probably a denial because there's something wrong with the claim.
So it's fair to say that if the claim is taking a long time to get paid, it's the doctor's fault?
Well, not necessarily. So there's a lot of scrutiny that happens on some of these claims too. And then once it passes.
I was trying to make you look good.
Yeah.
can. But once it passes through, so we have 2 of those claim auditing software tools that we use. And then it goes into our proprietary system internally, which has edits in place, looking for eligibility, looking for duplicate checks, so on and so forth. So all these 4 different points that it hits, there's hundreds of thousands of edits that a claim just has to pass through just to get to our decisioning of should we pay yes or no. And then once it hits that point, 47% of those dollars that come in actually stop for a manual review. So this could be a threshold review on dollars, it could be a medical necessity policy review, it could be a review for specific provider locks that we have in place because we just have a suspect provider in place, or we have a certain service code that we're looking at because there's some trending up and down, we want to scrutinize a little bit further. So that goes through different levels of approval, different clinical eyes who actually look at it to actually, could be a point where actually requesting medical records, itemized bills, to actually go through that and see if we should pay it. Then once we get to that decision, we go ahead and pay the claim. So that's the $13 to $15 million annually that get paid for your group. And then after that fact, we have a lot of post-pay things that are done. So we have internal claim recovery units who actually data mine for specific, looking for things that really couldn't be caught up front. So there's even like eligibility things that happen after the fact. We didn't get timely cancellations on file. Some of the dupe stuff happens. So there's a lot of stuff that happens after the fact. Subrogation, accident liability, somebody else's liability is responsible for it, wouldn't be us, we work with them. Things like that we have it as in place as well. So a lot of things that are being done in both spaces, and then for the most part we take these post-payment insights that we get and say, well, how do we fix this stuff up front? How do we prevent it from even paying initially, and then even to that point is how do we get this stuff into pre-service? How do you steer some of the clients and look at some of the trending of that as well? So we have all these different things. You can see it's almost $7 million in total, which is pretty significant so I mean, you think about it, we're getting billed a lot more than $13, $15 million we're getting paid. So we're getting billed a whole heck of a lot more that we're actually preventing on the front end. And then after that, we even have independent audits that are being done on our claims for accuracy. So we did 23 audits in 2016 alone, and the accuracy rate came back at 99.98%, which is pretty significant.
And you're talking about just McAllen ISD, right?
No, in total of our organization. Okay. And they just take a sample of claims across all of our lines of business, across our group, so it's not very specific to that. But anyway, so I'm just trying to exemplify all the different things that are being done in this space. It's not just claim comes in, we pay it, then we try to figure it out later. No, we try to ensure that the stewards of your dollars, we're actually making sure we're scrutinizing it from the point it actually gets submitted all the way through the end, all the way through payment, and even after that. So a lot of work done. And then we're also looking into continuous improvement. So what are the things that we continuously improve? Are there business partners, vending solutions that we use a lot of them today, that we continue to improve just because they have industry eyes on things. They see things across the industry and not just within a specific market, which is helpful as well. And analytics and advance and being more targeted into certain reviews instead of just stopping claims just to stop a claim. Be more targeted, stop the ones that you really should be stopping because, again, we got to pay claims timely as well too. So again, happy to take any questions on that. I know it's a lot.
Thank you. You deal with a lot of organizations, both in the public side and the private sector. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned the proprietary and all the steps. Mm-hmm. And thank you for that. How do you tailor, or do you tailor, for the various plans that we have? Because we may have certain items under our policy that we do not cover, that maybe somebody else. Can you kind of elaborate can you tailor that, and do you tailor it for us to our plan?
Yeah, absolutely. So the plan design, so we ensure that, it's obviously a proprietary, complicated system we have, and as the claim comes in, it reads what plan design you have, and it ensures we're paying towards that plan design, and then it's looking at policies and so yeah, it's absolutely tailored to you. And if there are additional things that need to be done with that, that are certain suspect that you guys find, I mean, if there's agreements on how we made, we can certainly tailor things out. So we can do it at account specific, we can do it at provider specific, we can do it at member centric as well.
Okay. So if there was a concern that might have been expressed that maybe certain items within our plan had been paid, mm-hmm. and there may be some concerns that they were paid through this automated system,
yep.
How do you audit, and how often do you review to make sure that the systems are truly complying with the policy and those items are not being paid through an automated system and are going to a manual review?
Yeah, so the great question. So the audit, really, essentially all the stuff we do in post-pay is essentially an audit on it. And if we have a specific concern that you guys would raise, we would certainly start digging into it, looking and see how we can, if it, one, is it a valid concern, is it a one-off issue that we have, or if there's something there, how do we make sure we prevent that from happening in the future? So if it's claim paying because maybe there wasn't auth on file and it just paid, and maybe there's something in our matching logic with the authorization to when the claim came in, so we work to figure out how do we fix that. So there's short-term things we can do. We say, hey, let's start locking these and review them so we can catch it up front while we're fixing the upfront portion of it. So again, if it's you find it a couple different ways, right? Concerns raised by the employer, if you see issues happening in other groups or other, within our retail market, we can say, hey, is this a global issue? Or it's from audits that we do as well.
On the flip side, it's covered under the plan, but it doesn't get paid for the policy, to the employee, the policyholder. So if it looks like it's not going to be paid, does that kick it out to a manual review, or does that just go through with an automatic indication to the policyholder, our employees, this is not a covered item?
Yeah, it depends. So when the claim comes in, there's certain, like if it's a medical, if it comes in hitting a policy for medical necessity, that most of the time gets kicked out for a review, because we have to, in order to deny a claim, you have to have a medical doctor review it. But if it goes out to because, say for instance, they didn't get the authorization, that usually just will go ahead and auto deny, and then they'll see it on their EOB that it auto denied.
And the employee appealing, I guess our plan provides, can appeal it directly to Blue Cross or Blue Shield?
Yes, there's an appeal process.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
This time I'd like to call Mr. Brent Stokes up from American Healthcare. Welcome.
Thank you, everyone. Board, appreciate your time.
Okay, let me get that.
There we go.
Control the slide.
Thank you so much.
We got them over here.
Thanks for your time. Thank you. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you.
That's all, yeah, that's all the way to the rebates. All right, perfect. Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Mr. President, thank you very much for having me. I'm Brent Stokes. I'm the Strategic Account Executive from American Healthcare. Board members, thank you for your time. I understand it's been a long week, and I'll be very short and succinct, which is rare for me, as Andy and some of the other folks can attest to having met every quarter with me. But what we do is we represent the pharmacy benefits for McAllen ISD right now. Effective October 1st is when we began our relationship with McAllen ISD.
October 1st of 17?
16.
16.
16, yes, through a pass-through contract. Now, what a pass-through contract is on the pharmacy side is basically the client, which is McAllen ISD, is going to be paying the exact amount that the drug's adjudicated at. And so it allows complete transparency of being able to see how much you're paying it for. And they're saying, well, what do you get out of it? Well, what we get out of it is the administration fee, okay, which is $1.99 per the contract. And what I tried to do here is I tried to incorporate the exact contract information here into the slides. So not only are the information is there, you can actually see the actual contract language in that information. And that's $1.99 per script. You say, well, how does this work? Why is it working for McAllen? Well, the reason it's working for McAllen is obviously lowest net cost. So when you have the plan design that's in place right now for McAllen, where you do the substitution of brands that are penalized if you do not utilize brand. If the member says, you know what, I want the brand, I want Nexium, I got to have Nexium, but there's a generic that's therapeutically equivalent, guess what? They're going to pay the cost and a penalty as well. So these type of plan designs really push the members to utilize generic medications where appropriate and therapeutically equivalent. There's also some next levels of management that we're looking towards that will also help get this lowest net cost. One of the items that we presented was a narrow network through a pharmacy. By utilizing a narrow network, what you would do is you would have one anchor chain pharmacy as well as a number of other independents. And you would utilize that because what you would do is you'd be taking out one of the pharmacies, one of the big chains pharmacies that are the least profitable to you as a pass-through type of scenario. So the other item that we're thinking about utilizing is a closed formulary. As we get to the rebates a little bit later, when you do a closed formulary, with an open formulary versus closed, an open is you have a number of medications that are covered, right, within a therapeutic class. When you do a closed formulary, basically what you're doing is you're closing down the openness of it and being very focused on specific generics and brands. By doing that and allowing specific brands and generics that are available, you can increase the back-end amounts through the rebates towards those specific brand medications. So that is another item with the closed formulary we're talking about, as well as the closed network. So those are some items that we're talking about saving. There is some possible savings that we can talk about if you're interested in knowing a little bit more. But what I wanted to talk about really quick on the next slide was the savings that was experienced comparatively between 2015 and 16 to 16-17. Basically what occurred is we saved $1.5 million during that time for the last year from 2016-2017. It's basically, the cost decreased about 25% since we've taken over. And that is basically due to the pass-through contract and the competitive rates that we have in place in the contract. As you can see there, if you take out specialty, now specialty medications, these are the drugs for some of the classifications like cancer, hepatitis C, HIV. These are very high-cost injectable medications, right? So those can drive up. You can get one medication, like a Hep C medication, can cost you $120,000 just like that with one person for one course of therapy over 12 weeks. So when you take the total plan cost and you take out the specialty, your plan cost decreased 26.7%, and we saved $1.2 million. Now, if you include specialty and everything else, that's where you get to the $1.5 million, which is fantastic. Again, well, let's talk about some of the drug performance. You could see between the 2015 and 16 and the 2016-2017, the wholesaler cost, the average wholesale cost, the AWP discounts, they decreased for not only the brands, generics, as well as specialty due to the aggressive rates that are in the contract. Every facet went down. Brands went down by 5.6%. Average generic costs went down almost 18%. Specialty, 21%. And so the average overall cost for the drugs went down almost 20%. However, and you knew that was coming, right? The but. There's always a but, right? But the decrease in the total average cost obviously was fantastic, and we did save that $1.5 million, but there were 3 specific drug states that actually increased. The plan cost increased, even though we had $1.5 million. And I heard listening in that obviously the diabetic situation is very prevalent. As you can see right there, there are 518 members utilizing, but it's almost 27% of your total plan cost on the prescription side. Anti-inflammatory drugs, for the joint pain, Enbrel, items like that, that's your second at about 13% of your total drug cost. And antivirals, about 5%. So if you put these 3 drug classes together, that is about 45% of your total prescription plan costs fall within just these 3 drug categories. One of the items that was mentioned previously was what can be done about this? What kind of programs can be offered? What we have is something called population health management. It's very similar to disease management. We use care managers through our population health management, and for a 3-year, we do a 3-year contract that has a guaranteed ROI over those 3 years. Right now, if that contract would be signed, the guarantee would be $5.1 million is a savings opportunity right there based off of just the sheer population.
Wait, say that again, slower.
And ROI is
Return on
Return on investment, I apologize, yes. So, and if we don't meet that, then we pay back all of the fees. So that is something, and again, we have an opportunity to provide a detailed.
Give us an
Concept.
example of some of the things that would be
Yeah,
done.
and I'll let him explain his program.
And then you, okay.
But it's very similar in what Blue Cross was sharing about engaging our employees. So it's another employee engagement strategy. So
Okay.
it's their version of it, so.
Okay.
Yes,
I'll wait till you-
exactly,
okay.
exactly. It's exactly what it was. And again, what we utilize is, again, the incentivization of membership through premiums, discounted premiums, obviously copays. When she was mentioning the generics, I was nodding my head because that is something very popular that is done, is the best way to see is an increase, especially with diabetes. You want them taking the medication because of the comorbidities. Because if you don't take it, you're going to end up on the medical side in having a liver transplant when you don't need it. Because if you're taking your medication, you're taking care, if you're diabetic, usually probably have high blood pressure and high cholesterol as well. I have both of those, but luckily I don't have the diabetes part yet.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
If I may.
Yes.
Along those lines, you know, some folks are struggling, even if they're working within the district and are being paid well, relatively speaking. Sometimes there are facts of life they're struggling, so they got to make choices.
Correct.
So one of them may be not paying for the medication, the copay or whatever the case.
Exactly.
Is there any sort of incentive for those individuals that they can get some sort of, either through your company or through the manufacturer of the brand, where they get a discount or no charge, given their
It's
situation?
entirely up to the district how you could set up your plan structure that way, where you would be able to offer diabetic medications generic diabetic medications at no cost. I've been in the PBM realm for about 17 years. I've seen a lot of creative ways to do that on the pharmacy side, in terms of saying, okay, we'll give you Lancets, swabs, whatnot for free.
Right.
Well, at a zero copay. And then there's also incentivization saying, okay, if you enroll in population health management for diabetes, the incentive would be all your generics will be at a zero copay through your employer.
That question, I know there are pharmacies that engage in programs that when the prescriptions are transmitted, it automatically searches a database, it comes back with a copay assistance program.
There you go.
Sometimes it'll guarantee you a $5 copay, sometimes it'll pay a zero copay, and that's paid for by the manufacturers. And that's an automatic search that's done at some pharmacies, not all pharmacies.
Right.
I know of a few, but there are some that are done that way.
You're 100% right, Mr. Bennett.
So,
Depending, I'm sorry, go ahead, yes,
No.
please.
So following along those thoughts, if we were to work a plan, and I gather you work with in-network, out-network pharmacies, or pretty much our employees can go to any pharmacy?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a thought or idea about maybe having agreements with pharmacies that are willing to do that versus non?
They do it anyway.
Okay.
It's up to their
I know there are
discretion.
pharmacies that do that, and they advertise it so that those people who need that assistance come to them, because other pharmacies, major retailers usually don't do that.
Right, but again, how is our employees aware of going to those pharmacies? I know we don't want necessarily direct per se, but at the same time, we are talking about direct, in the sense network or non-network on the medical side. How do would we work it, or would we do that for the pharmaceutical side? Because if I don't know, and, you know, then I miss an opportunity, and now I'm put in a situation, and some of our employees are, because of whatever hardships they may have, that we have no way of knowing. And then maybe part of the reason they're not taking the medication.
Exactly, and it's all based off of how you would like the plan set up. Because with the pharmacy side, it's basically, we would just code the plan to do X when the claim adjudicated. We could add messaging to the pharmacy that says, you know, do this. I know, you know, a lot of times they also have coupons that are available right there for specific medications at the pharmacy that they hand out. And I also can tell you right now, just with our call center, that we specifically have, I believe, not one, but two individuals that specifically work and know all of these different sites for members who call in and say, I'm having trouble for payment assistant.
So really, it could be a simple phone call and get that direction or get that information, as easy as that, before they fill out the prescription.
A lot of times you don't necessarily see it with diabetics, but you see it more with specialty medications. Some of the really expensive ones where they know that, beginning of the year, right, right now, if you get hit and you have a deductible and you're like, this medication is, let's say $1,500 and you got a $1,000 deductible, you're like, wow, I don't have $1,000 to pay for this medication. I guess I got to figure out something else. And that's where you would call in and say, listen, I went to the pharmacy, it was $1,000. It paid, but I got a front-end deductible. What do I do? And that's when we'll say, oh, are you looking for assistance? The manufacturer has this, and they give them websites to go to for coupons. They'll give them the manufacturer information to go to have a discussion to see if, because a lot of times the manufacturers want you on those drugs, and they also want you well, because that's why they're backing their products. So there is a lot of things that can be done in that case.
Thank you.
I have a question.
I know a lot of the,
Yeah, maybe, I have a question.
a lot of the independent.
I'm sorry, Andy, I got my back to him.
A lot of the better independent pharmacies do that for you.
Like,
I don't know which one.
but you've heard.
I've heard, I've been told.
Yes, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Well,
Who's next? Yes, sir.
I want to go back to the 1.5 million that we saved.
Yes, sir.
Because this board approved it, and we all want to pat ourselves in the back, but
Hey, that's all right. I'm happy to talk about it.
it's, we just got off, Blue Cross Blue Shield telling us that, the cost has been driven, we haven't increased premiums, and we saved $1.5 million.
Yes.
At whose expense? Does that mean that the employee is having a harder time filling their prescription drugs? Do we have I understand that you're saying that, you negotiated and there's certain things that we're charging, but somewhere along the line, something was sacrificed for that $1.5 million.
Yes. What
Can
you
give us a brief explanation of?
Sure. The rates are deeper. You're getting better pricing than you were at the previous employer based off of the year's worth of claims they gave us. So what I did, just so you know, so I took the claims and what they paid at from 2015-16, and then I looked at them comparatively to 16-17. And that's how I got these numbers, and that's how I know that our rates are deeper based off of the discounts you were originally getting as opposed to the discounts you're getting here. Does that help?
In English, the providers are getting paid a lot less.
Providers being pharmacies, so.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, so you're
Yes.
wondering where did it come from? It came from.
Came from the pharmacy providers.
But not all pharmacies.
Dr. Gonzalez.
Yes, sir.
One question. We have a network of pharmacies, and we also have a goal of alignment of cost. And we've agreed on a percentage per prescription that a particular pharmacy would make. What if we have an outlier pharmacy that, everybody is making this profit, but then there's somebody within our network is kind of going rogue and making this profit because they have their own standard for setting rates?
And they do. Each pharmacy has its own contract. And so you have different dispensing fees.
With
and
us
whatnot.
or with you?
With us. With American Healthcare has different contracts with Walgreens, CVS, and whatnot. However, if you kind of go through here, and I included this to the pass-through pricing schedule, this is what we guarantee to you. So we could have, it's through the pass-through, and this is the guaranteed network rates. I hope this will answer your question, Dr. Gonzalez, but ultimately, the network pricing rates are guaranteed on an annual aggregated basis. So,
It's this one.
aggregated. So basically, you could have somebody making a dispensing fee of $1.60 and somebody making a dispensing fee of 90 cents. At the end of the year, what we do is we aggregate it all together with all of the different pharmacies and the pharmacy contracts, and we see, okay, did we meet this AWP minus 18 on brand drugs? If we did, great, fantastic. That's what we were contracted to do. If we did not, then we will pay you the difference.
May I ask a follow-up question?
Yes, sir.
Our contract says $1.10 dispensing fee, right?
Correct. That is exactly correct.
Okay, but in our plan, there's a particular big box that's getting paid a dispensing fee of more than $1.10, right?
Correct.
My math tells me that if you're paying somebody above $1.10, the difference has to come from somewhere.
And it's coming from you.
from us,
Correct.
the other providers.
Correct. No, it's,
No, the plan.
no, the plan
The
is
district.
paying the difference.
Yeah.
But we have to true that up to $1.10 at the end of the year. And what we don't, we pay.
No, the plan is not paying for it because our contract says you can't charge us more than $1.10 dispensing fee if it's a pass-through contract.
Well, it's a pass-through contract, it's based on the aggregate of these amounts.
So when it averages out.
Okay.
Yes, that's
average
what I'm
or-
saying.
Okay,
When it
aggregate or
averages
no
out.
aggregate, but still, if Big Box is getting paid $2,
Right.
that means a provider's getting 0 dispensing fee, right? Because we're still at $1.10.
No, it's per claim based off of, are you saying like, for instance, X pharmacy is getting $1.50 and another pharmacy is getting $1, right?
Or less than $1.
Or less than $1, right?
Right?
So you take all of those claims in a big bucket, and your contract says that it has to come out to $1.10. If not, then you owe us the difference. You owe us that money, right?
But if it's true at $1.10,
Right.
let's say it's true at $1.10, you don't owe us any money. Where did you get the money to pay the Big Box store?
Right.
If you're paying them more than $1.10.
No,
The district's paying that.
The district's paying it.
But our contract says you can only charge us $1.10.
In the aggregate, though, it's not.
Well,
what he's saying.
but then also, if it's coming from somewhere, and it's coming from those providers that don't have the higher rate contracts, isn't it?
If you're saying like the smaller one who's paying the 90 cents is
Right.
paying that, no, I wouldn't say that they're paying it because they're paying their 90 cents.
Okay.
Because we're at, well,
Still the plan.
it's still the plan that's paying it. And if, at the end of the day, the plan has paid more than they should, then we, as American Healthcare, will give you that money.
Okay, and how do you determine what the plan should have paid? The total number of scripts times $1.10, right?
Right. Well, I don't do the calculations.
No. But you know the formula, right?
Yeah, so basically, they're gonna take all the brand drugs, all the brand claims from all the pharmacies, all the generic drugs from all the pharmacies that was filled at, and then they will calculate to see how everything comes out. And I know that's being done. I can tell you right now, I don't have the amounts yet, but that's supposed to be done next week. So we'll be able to tell you whether or not we owe you money, or if we met the agreement.
But if everybody was paid the same, so,
You wouldn't have to true up.
right. If everybody was paid $1.10, you wouldn't have to true up. If nobody paid above $1.10 and everybody was paying $1.10, there'd never be a problem.
Right, if you
So
could
why
get,
isn't everybody paying $1.10?
well, that's really not how it works because of the contracts with, if you wanted one person to agree to a 110
Right.
dispensing fee, then you'd have to get Walgreens to agree, CVS to agree, and all of
Or we
that.
could kick Walgreens out. The people who don't agree.
Right.
We could say, because at the end of the day, it's still our money, we're still paying $1.10.
Right, and that's why if you went with the narrow network and you kicked out Walgreens,
Yes.
that does have the highest,
And
you
paid
would save
everybody.
roughly $100,000.
Is there a way that we could in our contract say, regardless of who you're with, if whatever network you're with, I mean, whatever company you're with, we're paying you $1.10?
Not paying, but no more than.
No more,
$1.10.
yeah, right.
Because then that would mean, if you're saying paying, the
No,
ones that are
here's the
charging
deal.
90,
No.
Yeah, they're gonna up it.
Here's the deal. Are there any pharmacies accepting less than $1.10?
I don't know the answer to that question, I don't have the
I
detail.
venture to say that there is, and that's where you're getting the extra money to pay.
Oh, yeah.
That big
on
box
the other-
store.
But I was gonna say, they have to be paying less, I mean, because that's how you get it.
Then what's the
But it's still
rationale
coming
for
from-
letting someone gouge our plan?
I wouldn't say it's gouging, I would say
Well-
it's the
Okay, well,
utilization,
they-
because
Okay,
if
yeah,
you
well,
didn't have
maybe gouging,
Walgreens,
if we didn't have Walgreens, what?
then you would be utilizing somebody that isn't gouging your plan.
But that,
Wouldn't we rather do that?
I would agree, yes, and hence the reason I suggested
Suggested.
removing Walgreens and using.
I'm just wondering how much they were gouging us before you got here, because if we save 1.5.
Well, I know in the past with another PBM, everyone was paid exactly the same. You remember that contract?
Or exactly the same or up to?
No, it was on a
Exactly.
per
Flat fee.
claim, on a per claim formula basis that everybody got paid the same. Totally transparent.
Yes.
To me, that seems the fair way to do it. That way there's no aggregate. And that way no one's, because if it switches it, because if you have 80% of our people going to the people paying above $110, and you have only 20% doing, well, this 20%, I mean, to me, it should all be 100%, it's 110, and it's transparent, it's easy, it's fair, everybody's competitive. I mean, to me, it's a level playing field that way.
And to our employees, then they'd be able to make their choices and not have to be concerned.
And not have to be concerned, like, drive
drive
around
around town. And it doesn't impact them on their
town.
premiums on our side, because we don't have to be adjusting them.
Yes.
Mr. President, if I may, just Andy.
Yes, sir.
In this point in the game where we're saying that everybody was paying $1.10, was Walgreens paying $1.10, or was their standard that we set our own rate outside of that $1.10?
On this particular contract?
No, I'm saying
No,
historically, when we talked about everybody was at $1.10.
The immediate prior PBM was non-transparent, so we didn't know what was getting paid. We were just guaranteed certain amounts, and at the end of the year, they would true it up and say, we met it, didn't meet it. We don't know what they were getting paid, the reimbursements. The one prior to that, so it's 6 years ago, that one was, everybody was on the same playing field.
Even Walgreens?
Yes, everybody who was in the network.
Was that a pass-through contract or was that a traditional?
No, it was a pass-through.
Oh, it was a pass-through, okay.
Andy, maybe you can answer this. Did the Affordable
Affordable Care Act?
Care Act, because that was 6 years ago, and did the Affordable Care Act create this situation?
No,
Or that's what had been happening anyway,
No,
it's
this has
just,
been
it's just what the industry is doing, the pharmaceutical
Yes,
industry is doing.
there's several different models, I guess, of PBMs. There's some that are not transparent at all, and, they present to you certain guarantees, and they have their own contracts, different contracts with different folks, and they guarantee you so much. So we don't know if they're making a spread on the cost and they're keeping more for profit. We just know this is what we agreed to and this is what we expect them to do. So that was the one prior to. Before that was our first attempt at a transparent pass-through model, and it was that kind of contract where everybody that came on board was at the same level.
Before the first transparent contract, they would pay a provider $20 for a prescription, but they would charge the district $40 for that prescription, and they would keep the spread. That time we engaged that particular PBM, we asked in our request for proposal, that it be a totally transparent pass-through, that if they paid the provider $10, that they charged the district $10 plus their administration fee.
Right. They still got their profit, but we also got a good price for our employees.
Right. Interesting, you said you're charging us $1.99, but you're only paying the pharmacies between 90 cents and $1.60?
For dispensing fee, yes.
Interesting.
Now, since we are, Mr. Bell, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
No, but going back to this chart here, the pass-through, it does say there the retail network dispensing fee is $1.10 per prescription. It's a little different from what we've been discussing.
That's what they true up to at the end of the
Yeah,
plan.
because they're based on the
That's not how it
aggregate.
looks.
So it's not in the per case, it's in the aggregate.
If we do 50,000 prescriptions, which is roughly what we do every year, it would be 50,000 times $1.10.
And so this is what our conversations have been about, the 90 cents versus the
Right.
high.
But if 10,000 of those prescriptions are paid at $1.60, that's 50 cents more, so that's an extra $5,000. Those $5,000 probably come off the backs of the other providers that are not getting paid $1.60.
Correct.
And if it's not enough to cover it though, then it's coming out of.
And
And then it's coming out of our pockets when we
Right.
pay you that money.
Right.
But okay, this is what I'm confused about. Who determines, why would you determine that you pay a certain pharmacy 90 cents, and someone else $1.20?
Well, it's not transparent, nobody even may not really know that, right? In most
I
cases.
honestly,
they should know that.
it's based off of the different contracting entities. CVS Health has certain guidelines that say we will allow you to utilize our network.
But do they
Here's our
adapt to
rates.
your network, or do you adapt to their network?
We usually adapt to
Here
their
it is. The
network.
bigger the gorilla, the more banana they get.
Yes. We've actually gone to Walgreens not once but twice on your behalf to try to see if they would lower, and they would not. they didn't feel that the entity was large enough to make a dent in their
Okay.
profitability.
So I have a question. So let's talk about our employees real quick. So we have our employees that are obviously used to going to Walgreens because the numbers.
The numbers
determine that.
definitely dictate that,
Okay,
yes.
so just like in our health care, they have an in-network and an out-of-network. Can they still go to Walgreens and just pay the upcharge? Any kind of upcharge? Or,
Not right now. The plan is, there's nothing that would direct somebody one way or the other or incentivize them to use one
so we're
pharmacy over
gonna,
another.
if we decide to do this,
We
in
just-
which
Yeah.
we inconvenient, it's gonna be an inconvenience to all our employees that currently go to Walgreens.
The disruption, of the three items, the most disruption will occur at the network level.
Okay.
Yes, there's over 1,600.
So,
that
so
would
my
be
question to you then is, when we have some upset employees call us and tell us, hey, I can't get my prescription drug here, how much would the district save by not going with them?
About $100,000
A what?
a year. But if you went to, and it's the most disruptive but the least profitable in terms of changing. Now, if you went to a closed formulary, you would have roughly 500 people that would have to change medications, but you would roughly save around $450,000.
And that would still be going, they could still go to Walgreens?
Yeah, they could still go to Walgreens, you're not going to be touching those rates. But what you would be doing would be slimming down the various options for the medications. And kind of flipping the next page, guys, just so you could see the difference in the rebates. You see the open formulary amounts and then the highly managed formulary? That's the difference that each medication would get if you went from the
Okay.
open formulary.
So let's say
okay.
hypothetically, we go with whatever you recommend, let's say, changing these 500 scripts over. I know a particular friend of mine who has a child who requires to have a special medication, and even when that medication is they switch her to generics, it has an effect on her. And she suffers from seizures, and even changing the dose a tad bit messes the kid all up. And what happens if she falls within that 500?
If she falls within that, and that medication is no longer covered.
Right.
So there are brittle patients that require that, but that patient, we got taken care of, and it wasn't Walgreens.
No, I understand that. I understand that patient doesn't, yeah, I mean, she right, but if he puts the restriction, and that medication is within those 500 scripts, what happens then?
Then it goes to special review, and special review can override that. The P&T committee can override that particular.
So my next question is, how long does that take? Because that is very time sensitive for these.
Can be done in a matter of days, if not in one day. I know, because we've talked about it with other patients.
Okay.
This is referring back to, remember the other provider was here earlier was saying, if we do this, you all need to hold a line on your
Right,
appeal.
I understand.
This is the mechanism.
Right, but not
that
at
we're
somebody's
referencing.
health or.
No, but there's a process that we review
No, I understand.
and can override.
And you can always do it for a 30-day supply, and it gives you 30 days to go over the whole program.
Right.
It can be done.
Yeah, I would say on the pharmacy side, it's a lot easier to be able to have this situation brought to Andy. Andy can bring to me, and we could enter an override or do a prior authorization and have our clinical doctors reach out to the doctor himself, discuss opportunities for other variables that are either on the formulary, and if they're not, if it is required, we're not going to jeopardize someone's health to just make sure that it's aligned with the formulary. That is it does happen. Trust me, I've seen it. But usually it's a situation where the plan has agreed to allow it, and it's not something we're going to just automatically do.
Just for clarity,
Yes, sir.
if we go with a closed formulary and away from Walgreens, we save 500,000 a year?
More than that.
No, 500.
500, yes, because I think it was a little, about 450 a for, yeah.
If we were to do both?
Yes.
Oh, you do.
Yes.
And that means,
I personally, I wouldn't recommend doing both at the same time. I mean, because right there, now there would be overlap, and it depends how much disruption you're willing to, or how much
unhappy members you'll have, because you could have
Phase out.
members that are going to be impacted by both changes, obviously. Saying, wait, I can't go to my pharmacy and I can't take my drug anymore. That might be a little challenging. We would have to look at the overlap to see how much.
But you'd have 90 days notice, though.
Oh, yeah. It does take 90 days.
You're giving
We
them
would
3 months'
communicate.
notice, and
Sure.
I mean, I would think that we would definitely want to do both at the same time.
I know. I just wanted to make sure that there would be definite.
It wouldn't be one day to the next. It
No,
would
you
be-
have
Yeah,
3
if
months.
you did it all, it's something you could either do at a tiering process, or if you wanted to make the change all at
Yeah.
one time, you could definitely do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you take out that big box pharmacy, whichever one it is,
Mhm.
they can never go there, or they can still go there, but they would pay more, or they just?
What I would suggest is almost like a tiering situation there, is allow one fill to allow them to go back to get a 30-day supply. And then we also do the communication at the same time. So it's not just a,
They show up and it's like.
yeah,
you're
sorry,
out.
man, we're not in the network anymore. But after they get that one fill, they can't get any more. And after a certain date, they cannot go there at all. They won't even process.
Right.
You know, the Medicare D plans, because large insurers are making deals with large PBMs, January 1,
That's it.
they don't go there anymore.
Yeah.
There's no 90
no
days,
grace
there's
period
no,
or anything.
there's
Right.
no compassion, there's no squat.
Yep, it's sorry.
You know, hey, we can't fill it anymore, you gotta go somewhere else, you know?
And we don't know where that is. Good luck to you.
That's it, that's right. And I'm not saying we take that same approach, but I am saying that you can drill down to those drugs you may exclude and see what the usage is.
Sure.
And you could see which of those patients are brittle so that they can be looked at on a case-by-case basis.
Yep, especially
done that
from
way.
the pharmacy side, obviously, when we go to that formulary, we'll know exactly which drugs are impacted and exactly how, and exactly who and how many people. So that is something that we could have somebody review for those brittle patients and before any of this even occurs.
Okay, and your rebate numbers increased. Does that mean that you're going to a formulary where you get the highest rebates?
You get the highest rebates, yes,
The school district gets the highest rebates?
correct.
Okay, doesn't that drive the cost of the drugs up?
Not necessarily, in my,
Where does the rebate come from?
the manufacturer, because they want you to
Well,
use
where
it,
did they get the
because they know
rebate?
you had it this big, but now you have it this big.
Well, that's what I'm saying, if the manufacturer's charging $10, but your PBM wants them to be on the formulary, they say, okay, if we raise it to 12, we'll give you 2. That raised the price of the drug, right?
I wouldn't think so, not on a pass-through situation, because remember, you got everything guaranteed on the aggregate though. Right? So we gotta
No.
true it up, whether you're paying that much or
No,
not.
if we go to a closed formulary
Right,
and we want those drugs on that formulary
right.
because it's going to increase our rebate, well, the rebate comes from the increase in the price of the drug. It has to come from somewhere.
It's some other
Increased
entity
utilization.
or somewhere else.
No,
Well, yes, because think about it, because if you're going from a drug therapeutic class that has 10 drugs, and then all of a sudden it's got 5, and those 5 are saying, well, I'm gonna give you more money, because I know I've got, instead of people having 10 choices, they only got 5, so I know I'm gonna get 3 or 4 more people taking my drug that is X price.
that's in the perfect world.
Yes,
Oh,
sir.
But in
And
the
if-
world we live in today, that manufacturer's going to raise the price of that drug to the provider so that they can give you a bigger rebate.
That's what I was going to ask him, because I think I understand your question. So his question is that, yes, we're streamlining it to a certain set of drugs. Does that mean those are the drugs that are potentially the most expensive? So
Oh, gosh, no.
we're actually costing ourselves more money to get the rebates, which in
Is
the
that
end-
what you were saying, Dave?
Yeah.
Which in the end
No.
is not a good move. I think
Right.
where he's, if,
And this
The
is
rebate, the increase in rebate's got to come from somewhere.
true. And I believe that's where the P&T committee, who has created the closed formulary, has come up with that, because obviously it's a balancing act between efficacy and affordability. And you're right about the money. I see that. I understand where you're getting from now. I think Danielle might be able to answer that a little bit better, because she's our PharmD who helps with creating the
but if you were to
formulary.
decide to go that route,
Right.
you're saying there's a definite list.
Yes.
And we'd obviously know what that list is.
You already have the list.
And we can compare it to what our cost is.
Yes.
And we would know from here to here, our cost stayed the same, or no, it went through the roof, but we're getting a little more rebate, and be able to see that.
Yes.
Wouldn't we?
Yeah. In fact, I think that's what we're doing with the provider, when we were trying to utilize him a little bit more.
Oh, okay.
What I did is provided the closed formulary list to the doctor group.
Let's not mention his name.
Okay, there was a doctor group that was highly utilized by the
Sure,
plan.
sure.
What we decided to do is to focus this, because of just the sheer volume of scripts, is if we can start getting folks and having this group of doctors start utilizing folks already on this closed formulary and recommending these medications, the changeover, if decided upon, would be less impactful, because these folks would already have been pushed there by the doctor groups.
That physician actually came,
Mhm.
that physician actually came to us and said, well, what can I do to help? And so we worked with them and said, well, if you're willing to, here's our formulary. As long as you stick to this list, we know that our plan is getting the better benefit. So here you go. And so we shared that with them, so.
And that's before we've actually committed to it. So what you'll see then is the increased rebates when you actually get it, because right now you're getting the standard rebates.
Perfect example of the price of a drug going up because of the rebates they're giving, and you mentioned it early on, is Nexium.
Mhm.
When that pill came out, it was $1 a capsule, and now it's $15 a capsule?
It's ridiculous, yes.
Okay, but yet you find it on every single drug formulary, on every single PBM. Why? Because they give a big rebate.
Yeah.
Why? Because they're charging $15 a capsule.
Which now.
So they're
you can
giving
actually-
part of your money back in reality, where they could have just stayed at the lower price.
They're charging 15.
But they're charging 15 instead of
$10
1.
back.
That's my point. They're
Yeah.
charging you to say, I'm gonna give, no, they're giving
Okay.
your own money back. is
How
what
do
they're
we
doing.
split, you said you have our rebate. Is
For
the
the
rebate
usage, they're
100%
trying to
back
get
to the
you.
school district?
No, the rebate is 110 per claim.
110 what?
That's for anything over, that's the 90-day supply, basically. Anything from, 1-day supply to 83 would be, you'd be paid for a brand medication, $46.
Okay. And is that the total rebate you received from the manufacturer for that drug, for that
I
prescription?
don't know. I don't
How
know.
how much of these rebate does the school district get?
I just said,
No, percentages.
I don't know percentages. It's based off a dollar amount per claim.
Is that an auditable?
Yeah, oh yeah, everything's auditable. If you would like to do a full audit, either on the rebates, the true up on the claims, it's all available.
Because I've spoken to Mr. Silva about this. Our rebates have been different with every vendor that we've used in the prescription plan. But yet, our formularies haven't changed for the most part, and our utilization hasn't changed for the most part. We've always been between 45 and 50,000 prescriptions, year after year after year. But yet, one year we'll get a substantial check, and another year we'll get a much smaller check. And we've never been given a real explanation as to why it changes.
Well, claim variation in terms of how many are used, which medications are being used, day supply. Because obviously, I'm just speculating, because if you look, there's a day supply limit and there's a certain amount that you get per brand claim. And so one is 110.
And the reason I asked that question, and maybe you answered it with your closed formulary, but if we can affect the size of our rebate, and we knew how it worked on your end, we could affect how much rebate we get to increase the rebate. That's why I'm asking the question.
Oh, yeah, basically by going to the closed formulary, and once we determine, obviously, the questions regarding the efficacy and what's on that formulary, and then you could see the difference between the 275 and the 65 versus the 46 and the 110, you are effectively changing that. And what I've tried to do, and we've worked with Andy, is to try to speculate regarding the rebate checks coming in. And it's very difficult because they all go through an aggregator, the rebate aggregator, based off of the information. But come up with a pretty good plan to do an estimate. And you can actually see what's been paid out so far, and it's relatively close. Roughly between 90 and 100,000 for the last 3 paychecks, or checks that have gotten, and the next one's going to be in mid-April. And we'll see about that. So roughly, is that what you were used to, is seeing a certain amount with a variance of about that amount, or?
It's not the highest rebates we've got, they're at least consistent, but I still don't think we're getting all of the rebate. I had another question, and it's on prior authorizations, because we get patients who complain, employees who complain about a drug being on a prior authorization.
Yes.
What is the factors you use in determining why a drug is a prior authorization drug and why it's not?
Generally, for prior authorization, there's a number of different reasons. It could be clinical reasons. There might need lab values. There might be medical items that need to be cross-referenced. It is for efficacy reasons in terms of whether or not there is other medications that they have to check on to see, because there's been a lot of interactions taking this drug with other drugs. You got to make sure that you check all of the history. So there's a number of different factors that kind of go into the prior authorization.
So it's a checkbox menu thing off the program when it goes through adjudication?
Yeah, based on the medication, there's numbers of different clinical and or other items that they need to check off.
And who determines those checkoffs? Does Mr. Sila's risk management department do that? Or?
No, it's the clinical P&T committee. It's a number of different physician, actual doctors, pharmacists, as well as
Do you all
other
charge
folks.
for those?
For prior authorization, yes.
How much?
I can check. I think it's 7 and 28. 7 for the administrative portion, and if it needs to go to like a Form D or the actual physician, then it's 28. Let me double check.
Yeah, that's right.
So you can pick a you can pick a prescription if someone's getting it filled, pull it out, and then charge us to get it approved?
To review it clinically, yes. That's how it works. Any prior authorization for any PBM charges for prior authorization in different levels.
Wow.
And who decides though? I might have missed them.
They told me that. They decide.
And how many of
They
our
decide.
claims
I was
are
gonna-
requiring prior authorization? Do you have any
American.
Percentage-wise, no, but I could find that out for you if you like.
Yes.
I actually have some number I can share with you. I took a look at the last full quarter I had. I can tell you, we had over 12,000 scripts, 12,732 scripts filled October, November, December. And of those 12,264 required prior authorization.
Okay, next question is, out of those 200, how many of them were approved?
I can tell you, well, the difference, the math is, I show 71 were denied.
It's 130 per 129.
Okay,
Are you good, Mr. Riddle?
by the minute.
Mr. Saldivia?
Thank you. It looks like on these rebates, it's conditional upon manufacturer acceptance or approval of claims and receipt of the payment of the rebate by your group.
Correct.
And it also states that rebate payments shall not be applied to 340B, Medicaid, and third-party claims.
Correct.
Okay. How do you identify the third-party claims in your system?
I honestly don't know the answer to that question, but I could find that out for you.
Okay. Now, it looks like, on a quarterly basis, it's tracking, as Mr. Trustee Vela noted, pretty consistent. So it looks like at the end of the year, every quarter, it would be, if you annualize it, it'd be about just a little under $400,000. And this may go to Mr. Sila. When we get that rebate, does it go back into the plan itself or the funding?
Absolutely.
And that helps us offset costs?
Absolutely.
And when we budgeted, how much were we anticipating? Were we anticipating that roughly 400,000, or were we using a different?
No, yes, sir. It's actually that number almost spot on, and that's what he alluded to earlier. As part of our budgeting process, I estimate what we can expect in rebates so we can take credit for it in the budget process. And we estimated about, I think, 105,000 we were using as our estimate. So it's
pretty well spot on.
Right on, yes, sir.
And you did a pretty good job
Yes,
of
sir.
projecting. Okay, very good. And so by doing so, how does that transfer to the premiums to our employee in reduction by the fact that we are getting the rebate?
Well, see, that number is already built in. So despite the fact that we have the anticipated credit of these rebates and obviously the savings we've had in the pharmacy spend, it's the medical side that's really having the huge increase. So this really doesn't cause really a dent into.
No disruption, no real concerns about necessarily adjusting premiums or anything, it's pretty much spot on.
On the, in
On the
terms-
pharmacy side.
Yeah, on the pharmacy, no. On the pharmacy, it's all built into the medical plan. So we only have one premium, and the pharmacy benefits are rolled up in there.
Okay.
So there's no separate premium for our pharmacy benefit. So when we talk about our whole program, that's what Mr. Garza is going to speak about in terms of premiums. So we don't break it off on the pharmacy side.
Right.
We need to adjust or don't need to adjust premiums. It's really overall in the total.
But it's not influencing what's happening to the overall?
Not this one. This is actually, in some sense, helping us, but certainly not enough.
Gotcha. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
If I may, if I can go back to one thing that I wanted to, please, I wanted to ask Brent, but also discuss because it caught my attention. The whole discussion about services that we could potentially use to help our employees save money on their co-pays. And this might be one for Mr. Garza too. The whole issue of co-pay cards and premium waivers, not premium, co-pay waivers from the marketing side, those are driven to the most expensive drugs. And while yes, it helps the employee, the bulk of that cost still comes to the plan. So if these services that steer employees to a zero copay, if those are for the highest cost drugs, our plan still gets hit with that cost. While we might help the employee, our plan's going to pay the higher cost. Now I'm not familiar with those programs, so I don't know if that is the case, but I do know that when we see these marketed drugs on TV, those are typically the most expensive to our plan. And so they are trying to incentivize employees.
Yeah, you're right about that because of utilization.
Yes.
But the difference that the copay, that those cards pay is paid by the manufacturer. But you're right, the cost of the drug, for the most part, is paid by the school. You're right.
By the plan.
You're right. But that's outside of the provider's. By the time it gets to that point, there's not a whole lot we can do about it.
No, and I'm not
You have
saying
to
it's
stop
a
it
good or
before it
bad
gets to that
program.
point, yes.
What I'm saying is that there's still a cost to our plan.
Right. Oh, yes.
And if these are the strategies that only the highest cost drugs have these programs, well then we're helping our employee, but at the same time hurting our employee because ultimately the plan is going to pay that higher cost, and that obviously hurts.
Passes on into
You're right.
premium charge.
You're exactly right.
Thank you.
Go ahead. No, that was it.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, that was all I had. With the rebates was the last part of it. Other than the opportunities to look into the narrow network as well as the narrow formulary or the custom formulary. I can provide more detail around the population health management if you wanted to see a little bit more detail in regards to, generally the programs are obviously the hyperlipidemia, the high blood pressure, asthma, diabetes first and foremost. I can provide with you what there is a version of it that's a little bit different than the population health management. The population health management is a program, I'm trying to remember the amount, but I think it's like $3.25 per employee per month for the program, but after 3 years, again, the return on investment is guaranteed. And then we'll pay that back if we did not need it. I don't have the actual proposal in front of me. I know I've presented it to Andy before. It was indicated that it was something that obviously that would require a board vote, but I'm happy to provide that again in terms of the detail. It has all of the amounts and items like that, so you can kind of see as well as the amounts that it would save the plan, because I know that was the one that I think would make the most impact based off of the diabetic population and the utilization. I think it would make a very large impact. And I think obviously it would obviously save you the largest amount of money as well. So, but again, I understand signing a 3-year contract for a public entity is not always the easiest thing to do. But again, my job is to present this, have it discussed, and then again, if there's incentives or things that you'd like to work with it, change it a little bit, that's the other thing we can do. We're very flexible with the population health program in terms of incentivization towards the members, outreach, recruitment, marketing materials, and so forth. So those are the 3 things, and I'll make sure I get, excuse me, Mr. Silva, all of that detail to provide to the board for
for review, if you'd like. If there's something you don't want, don't want to waste your time, but if all three of those programs sound like something that's a good opportunity and a good cost-saving opportunity, I'm more than happy to do that.
I know we talked about the narrow network and the big box pharmacy. The administration's talked a lot about Walgreens and removing them. It's a savings of $100,000 to $110,000. It does affect about 1,600 employees. When we talk to American Healthcare, you'll help us with the communicating to our employees if we decide to go down that road.
Definitely, we have a outreach plan in terms of reaching out to the members. The letters, we would indicate when we would move a network and somebody was going to this X pharmacy, we know exactly which pharmacy they've gone to. What we would do is very, very similar to a geo access. We would say, you no longer can go to this Walgreens, but there is X, Y, and Z pharmacies within a 5-mile radius of you. So we would not only indicate when it's going to happen, when they're not allowed to go anymore, the one refill that would be something that we had talked about. We would communicate that in the letter, as well as the other places that they can go. And we'd even help transfer the scripts.
The other big box, the other big box in town, are they charging the 110 or better?
The other big box is very excited. We've been in contact, our network administrator has been in contact with them, and they are willing to do some help, and we're actually right now discussing any opportunities to provide some incentive for them to go from one big box to the other big box, to see, like maybe either a gift card or something along those lines.
So you're already thinking about steering them to another big box?
That only pays $1.10.
Wait a minute. You're already looking at steering them to another big box?
That's part of the
Why don't you steer them
opportunity.
to all of the providers in town?
Oh, no, we can.
Okay. Instead of eliminating from the network, I'd like to see you have them comply to the same contracts that everybody else is under. That is a much...
That makes more sense.
That makes
Sure.
a lot more
And
sense.
it's
Keep
best
them
for
in the
employees.
network, but make them accept...
Yeah.
So for Walgreens, they've already said no.
Right.
Twice.
Well,
Yeah,
all you can do is ask.
Yeah,
Yeah.
All you can do is ask.
yeah. But I agree.
But,
Especially,
keep them in the network, but just make them comply.
yeah. But I mean, especially because we're in the education business and we're educating people to go off and become pharmacists, and we tell everybody come back, we have a job, and then we're not gonna pay them the same thing, local pharmacy versus a box.
Right.
Everybody, 110, 110, 110. I mean, whatever the rate is, it's transparent, it's fair, and everybody gets the same. Otherwise, you don't play ball with the school district.
And our employees have access, that's
Yeah.
the important thing.
That's the important thing.
Yeah.
I mean, the government did this with TRICARE, and retired military, so they did that with TRICARE about 2 years ago. So, and it's happening out there in the industry too. So, we talked about it at the HR board committee this week and asked if it did require board approval or not. It was just a matter of informing the board, but the cost savings opportunity to $100,000.
Yeah.
Everything should be on the table in my mind.
Yes.
Or in our minds, excuse me.
Yes, I agree. Thank you very much.
I'm more than happy to take that back and have those discussions with the network team, see what can we do. Like you said, all we can do is ask.
Keep them in the network and pay everybody the same.
Yes.
Right.
And get rid of the aggregate and charges on a per claim basis.
Then we need a new contract.
Well, and then maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And with that,
What's it, say that again?
That would require that we rebid this contract
And maybe that's what we
to
need to
make
do.
those kind of savings.
Right now it expires, not this year, but next year.
We're in a 3-year, up to 3 years, we're into the second year, so we would have one more renewal.
Option. Or we could go out right now.
Sure, absolutely.
Cancel and
we
go
have
out.
options.
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah.
And yes, just.
Yeah.
It's really a one-year contract with 3
With 3
years
years,
options.
right.
Right,
not
well,
a
there's
three-year
there's
contract.
actually a 60-day out too.
Yeah, so we can use our
At any
60
time,
day
so
out.
if it's a
bid.
60-day out, you can go out to bid and whatnot, which, don't show that, tell my boss that I'm talking about that, because
Well, we already knew that.
I know you knew that, but.
You're being
Like,
fair.
yeah, I don't want to talk
You're being
about.
upfront.
You don't want to
That's
talk
good.
about termination, so, yes, no, I'm being upfront, and you're right, that is the 60-way, and that might be a definite opportunity, and that always can get people talking and moving. Definitely don't tell them I said
Talking is
that.
good.
We're being screened.
Yeah, I know, I see a lot of questions.
Brent, thank you for your time, sir. We appreciate
We
it.
may not see you again, Brent. All right, thank you, everyone.
We're gonna see you.
President, thank you for your time.
Hey, we'll find you a job with the next PBM we have.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, you guys have a good rest of your evening.
You say.
5 minute?
Or 10, we can eat.
Pizza break.
Yeah, let's eat.
She was about the building.
Are we on break yet?
Yes. A little break.
Yeah.
Everybody's leaving? I'm taking a 5. Take 5.
It's their call.
You get some of those independents to sell Bluebell ice cream. I'll go there all the time.
Hey, I still Bluebell ice cream.
Yeah.
I do. Go get a milkshake at the pharmacy. Yeah.
Right.
Roger.
Oh, come on.
We don't even know for the 15 Yeah.
That's the opposite of what
So.
He's here, he's ready to go.
He's ready to go. We'll continue. Step out.
Well, I was leading to it because how do you true up the $1.60 or whatever, it's got 90 cents, whatever. He's not pulling money out of his pocket.
Where? Okay, that's Cazadores, and then the question is, no.
Is it old?
Cazadores.
That's straight out there.
Pizza, they have Bavarian.
Yeah, they got to put it in their pocket.
Okay, well, they also have pizza. But they said pizza's much cost.
I can show you the price. Well, I just got to read price about this now.
Get a beer tonight.
I don't mean to rush.
No, that's all right, that's all right. Yeah, I was
If I walk out, it's
Okay,
okay,
no,
no,
it's fine.
Tony?
Yes, sir.
2, 3 more minutes, or 5, or what do you think? As far as the break. As far as the break.
Oh, 3 minutes, 5
3
minutes.
more minutes. We'll start. We may step out.
I got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. No problem.
And I forgot to hand these.
You guys are okay with
How about try to avoid the redundancy?
Thanks, bro.
Good luck.
There's a lot of stuff to do.
So you can't say educate our employees. You can't.
You're not gonna get a diabetic and cure it by buying a new program that's going to steer him to another medication or another treatment. You're not gonna cure diabetic by making him run 10 miles a day.
That's right.
Y'all care for pizza?
Everything's got a price.
Yep.
There we go.
Yep.
You took her on. Anybody?
I was probably asking I was getting hungry. I was worried, I spilled pizza someplace, I was getting hungry.
There's some snacks and stuff over there.
That would fix our off numbers. But, Danny, are you gonna take him into a presentation with you?
I'm good, thank you.
No, it's good.
That was mine.
Little Caesars is $5, $5.
If it's hot, it's good. I can't eat that one.
Is this the plain quesadilla? Yeah. Plain
Not bad.
quesadilla?
Yeah.
Uno de that.
And fish.
Thank you for your time this week.
Is this a fish?
Oh, no, that's what I'm here
Conversation was really good, very educational.
for. I noticed in Blue Cross's proposal and even on American healthcare, when the numbers are projected for the amount of savings they use per employee per month,
And those are
when
cheap.
it goes to cost, they go to per member per month. So I was gonna tell, in fact, I'm gonna mention it to Cindy, but not to be doing that, because it skews the numbers. Makes it look like you're doing a lot better than what you really are.
You mentioned that the other day, and I was specifically looking for that when I saw the whole trial. I think last time they did the PM here.
Yes.
So this time you're trying to, I don't say sneak.
Well, to me, that's not a sneak. It's actually, it's, their staff does it. But if you look at their average savings, they took PEPM, and they went to 85, and you add PMPM, it drops it to like 34. But it really takes a big hit.
All right, guys, we'll start in about 2 minutes. I'm sure our district employees would like to start their spring break.
Watch this, please.
And this is like the last 2 minutes of the game, right? We have the...
Yeah. This is where all the scoring goes on, Roger.
There's no timeouts.
No.
The clock doesn't stop.
Sudden death.
Basketball. It's gonna take forever. Basketball.
Really?
It may take you forever, 30 minutes.
Your nickname today is Tom Brady, Roger.
Oh, yeah.
2-minute drill.
See what you can accomplish.
I'm gonna go for the 10-yard line down to end zone.
They were behind the whole game, the last 2 minutes, they got it down to 2 points. And then they were losing by 9. So, you're right. You're right, you have to over 2 minutes.
That's over there.
Doc, quit emailing me, man.
Just watching, I'll be watching you.
Just a second here.
Colleague to colleague.
Oh, I got you.
They had 10 seniors on the team. For star players, is this talking? He scored in.
None of that appears.
When they were, no, 8, they scored like 22 points. The day before that, when it was 16, they scored 40 points. So they just picked up.
Last night we were down 16. Sorry. We were down to 18, and we cut it to 2. And then they just kind of took right off. But game time wasn't until 10:30. And we had a watch party at University Draft House. I got home at 1:15 this morning. Yeah, that was quite fun.
Yeah, I can imagine. Did the key work in the lock still? Yeah.
It did.
Good.
There was just no TV on. But all right, it looks like everybody's back in place. So, Mr. Miller, the floor is yours again.
Thank you for everybody's patience today. We have Mr. Roger Garza here from Valley Risk Consulting. So, Roger, I'll turn it over to you, please.
Debbie, Mr. President, board members, thank you so much for staying a little bit over to hear our report. First of all, if you look at page number 2, I'll give you a quick index of some of the terms we're going to be talking about here, some of the glossary terms. You have a calendar year benefits, which is 1/1 to 12/31. Fiscal year, July 1st, June 30th. Administration services contract year, October 1st through September 30th. And below, you see all the plans that you have in place. You have the state plan, the high plan, the basic plan, and the alternate plan, the employer-sponsored alternate plan.
So, Roger, what is the state plan? I didn't,
Back in the 90s, because there was a lot of school districts that were going through some turmoil with their health insurance, TEA issued a regulation, if you will, that required all school districts to offer a plan that was equivalent to what ERS offered, or the state, which was back in the mid-90s was 90/10 with a $250 deductible and $1,000 out of pocket. They haven't actually said anything like that, and it's a good question because we keep bringing it up. But today, the state plan, ERS's plan, is actually a little bit more in line with what your, in between your high and your basic plan. So it's got a higher deductible, higher out of pocket, and maximum cost.
Excuse me, Mr. Esparza, did you say state plan or alternate plan?
no, it's state plan, because I saw it on your
okay,
document a couple of times. I was like, what is the state plan? I didn't know if that was what TRS is. I guess.
No, it's our plan, but it has to be better or equal to or better than what ERS's plan was back in the 90s. And it's still, we make very little changes on that particular plan.
Now, when you say ERS, are you referring to the teacher retirement system, the employee retirement system?
Employer retirement system.
Okay.
So there was a lot of manipulation back in the 90s regarding district plan, so they made it to equivalent to the ERS plan.
Gotcha.
If you turn to page number 3, these are your projected annual cost. Your fiscal year 2017, 2018 is cost over contribution, and it takes in the enrollment as of January of 2018. Your 2017, 2018 annual contribution is projected to end at approximately $22,862,304. That is all employer-employee contributions. Your 2017, 2018 projected expenses trended out through June 30th are projected to end at $25,485,559.93.
Excuse me, is there any way you can make that a little bit bigger? If you can go to the margin, please, thank you. Thank you.
Your projected cost over contribution excludes all your stop-loss reimbursements and your RX rebates. Is projected to be $2,623,255.93.
Do you normally exclude the stop-loss reimbursements and rebates? Or if you put those back in there, it's still that high?
Well, we're actually going with just the target amount because some of them haven't yet reached that 330,000 specific threshold. So we don't know how many are going to get over the 330. And it won't be very many. Typically, you get 1 or 2, but it's not very many. Next, we see the 2016, 2017 health fund balance that we had approximately $4,101,634. The 2017, 2018 projected deficit is of $2,623,255. We have an assigned fund balance transfer of $500,000 and a pending assigned transfer of approximately $1,500,000. We have a projected 2017, 2018 health fund balance of $3,478,378.07.
That's as of January. That's not as of, that won't be in June. That's this number.
Projected for June. It's for June.
Okay.
June 2018.
On that line, what should it be? Are you going to cover that for us?
We will be moving on the next slide. We'll have some additional information.
Thank you.
On the next slide, number 4, page 4, you'll see the plan performance, what the plans are actually and how they're performing. From July 2017 to January 2018, you have the state plan, which is the state equivalent plan, is a deficit of $39,269.39, and there are currently 12 employees participating in that plan. The high plan has a deficit of $1,230,865.08, and it currently has approximately 769 employees enrolled in that plan and their dependents. The basic plan, which is the district-sponsored plan, has a current positive balance of $1,227,203.80. There's approximately 2,333 employees participating in that plan. The alternate plan, which is the limited benefit plan, has approximately $518,052.65, and it has 186 employees participating.
Why are the basic and the alternate plan in the black and the other ones in the red?
Typically, historically, your high plan, your state plan, even in this district or any district, will always be in the red. Because normally you have people that are high claimants that either participate in there. There's a reason why they're there, and one of them is because they have to either have chronic diseases or want to receive more benefits in exchange. Any questions? We did a forecast. The next page, on page number 5, we have a forecast projected cost We will always use per employee per month. We will never use per member per month. So you'll always see only per employee per month. Your TPA vendor typically uses per employee per month when it's on the positive, and then per member per month because it spreads out the cost. It averages less. So, but we get a better consistent forecasting when we only use per employee per month. It's a set number, so we can work on that number. In 2017, we're projecting at fiscal year 2017, that'll be 18. We're projecting that your cost is going to be $644 per employee per month. 2018, 2019 is projected to increase to $675 per employee per month. 2019 and 2020 is projected to go to $709.
And that's just based on inflation?
It's a 5% inflation factor, a trend factor, but currently that's the way your plans are behaving. That does include all your medical, pharmacy, dental, your administrative service fees, and all your fixed fees, fixed costs. Any questions? We decided to look at Region 1 school districts and compare McAllen to the other school districts to get a better idea of where all the employer contributions were at. If we look at the first school district on the left side, you'll see one district at $421 contribution, PSJA at approximately $566 per employee, Edinburgh at $464, McAllen at $379, Mission at $364, and La Jolla at $425. So you're basically right below most of the other comparable school districts.
Roger, would it be fair to say that PSJA's fund balance, medical fund balance is healthier than ours?
No. There's a reason why they're at 566, and it's typically because their fund balance or their reserves took a hit. So whenever you see an escalating amount, it's typically because the reserves are getting consumed.
They're trying to get ahead of it at this point.
They're paying for their actual costs, and this is because they have a clinic in-house that assists a lot of the employees.
In-house on their campuses?
No, in one, it's just
Oh.
a centralized clinic.
And Roger, would it be fair to say, up until January, we transferred 500,000 into the fund balance? If we transfer the remaining 1.5 million, which is roughly another $50 per employee per month, in reality, for 17-18, we would have been at 429.
That is correct. That is.
Wait, say that again?
If we end up transferring the entire 2 million from
Right.
general fund into the health plan fund,
All right.
in actuality, we would have been at the year at 429 instead of 379, because that amounts to an additional $50 per employee per month.
Okay.
So we're in line with most of the other school districts. So we were able to obtain a TASB survey that Mr. Silva was able to share with us, and we decided to add it as part of our presentation. And it gives you the average contributions for employee only from school districts across Texas. What we found there in the survey was that the average school district contributed approximately $406 per employee per month. So we were basically in line. At the time we received this, we hadn't done the adjustment yet, but it's $379, but it is here at $429. The average employee contribution for employee only under the survey was $81 per employee. McAllen ISD is currently at $52. The average employee contribution for employee and family, the survey had the state average at $668. McAllen ISD was at $430.
But now when we look at the additional $50, would that be passed on to the average employee contribution or the average plus family?
No, just the average employee contribution.
So the average employee contribution then would be $102 if we're looking at it from that perspective.
Yes, but we haven't actually done it yet. So we're actually at, if you take the 379, because it's the employer contribution.
Correct.
We would actually be at 429. But we haven't, we didn't include it here, but we haven't done it in the other two.
But we are at 429,
That's employer cost, not employee.
because we infused it.
If we do the remaining one.
Yeah, the remaining, the balance.
So then that would go to $2.
No.
No, no,
It's
no.
only on the employer
Yeah,
contribution
the employer
side.
side.
We haven't
That's
done
the employee
anything
side.
to the employee side.
Okay.
There has
So
not been a
that
change in 9 years.
379 would be,
It's
what she's saying,
429.
420.
It's really 420, yeah.
Board, I apologize. I'm going to excuse myself. I've got to go work.
Okay.
But I'll leave Larry to close out the workshop. Thank you all for your participation this week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roger. I appreciate your time. And to Jesse and the gang as well. Thank you, guys. We will definitely see you soon. I will contact you and we can further discuss.
Thank you. The survey, does it take into account all school districts, the large school districts, or only those in our same population of membership?
It took in all self-funded school districts and their contributions. And typically, the self-funded, fully funded fall within the same pattern. So it's got them all in there.
So it wouldn't be any real difference whether you had a staffing population 3 times our size or significantly, because it's looking at it per membership and what the plan covers and what you're recouping. It's taking all that into account.
You would probably find about 4 school districts, possibly 5, that would have population figures of over 10,000 or in that range.
Okay.
But typically your Houston ISDs are already not Houston, Dallas ISDs are already someplace else.
Right.
Fort Worths are gone too. So it doesn't really take a lot of the northern regions, it's more in the central and further south.
Okay, and that's what I was trying to get at, because I got the impression it was all of Texas schools. So-
And you're right, it is. It's just that there's a lot of school districts north of Waco that are no longer participating. They're in TRS.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yes. So on the following slide, we decided to add some premium contribution calculations per tier, something similar to what McAllen ISD has. If you look at the right side of the column, you'll see that you have one district, La Jolla ISD, that has a participation on each employee for the exception of their employee only. Right below that, you have Harlingen ISD that has the same similar low plan, high plan.
On La Jolla, where it says new plan, is that what they're proposing for next year or what?
They actually created a new plan, a limited benefit plan.
Oh, okay.
So it's not similar to what you have. It has some restrictions. It's kind of what the vendor typically said was flexible or charging. It's restricted to one facility.
It looks like it works out for an employee only, all right? 0, or how does that work?
No, it is zero. It's
The district pays all of it for them.
Right.
But it's very limited in...
Yes, in scope, yes. And so it contains the cost to just certain participating hospital providers. And then in the PSCA side, you have basically your high plan, base plan, your state plan. And again, you have 0 participation on the base plan or 0 cost. But the participation amount is basically funded by the district. And then you have, on the left side, you'll see the other participating districts. Edinburgh's CISD only now has just one plan. And there's a take it or leave it situation. But their employee only is $90.
What type of participation do they have? Probably
Everybody,
everybody, right?
yes. If you want out, they leave you out, but typically it's if you're a substitute, they even take the substitutes in.
For the employee, it's not bad, it's $90.
No, that's correct.
Yeah,
It-
very
it's-
limited
yeah.
plan. Oh, it's a very limited plan?
Very limited.
Yeah, in terms of the deductible's higher, so,
That's how they're able to do it.
yes, sir.
Now, in relationship to what we have, is it closer to the basic then?
A lot closer to the base.
Okay. And we're at 52 compared to them.
Yes, sir.
That brings clarity. Thank you.
On page number 9, we have projected fiscal year 2018, 2019. These are just optional. We've been toying with the idea of how we could basically fund this situation, this deficit, and try to get the plan back into the black. We looked at the employer contribution at $50 per employee per month with no employee participation. It leaves us with a deficit of approximately $1,917,544. If we do nothing, if you do something and we leave the employees unaffected, we'll suffer another $2 million cost. We have,
For 2018-19, it could escalate, or there's no way it can, over time, if we do something and not pass the cost, that it could get better?
there's options, there's additional options that shows how we can offset that increase rather than just employer participating.
But that would mean putting another 2 million, to get to 4.29, that would be another 2
Every
million
year.
next year, right?
Right.
That's not an option.
It's not an option, but we want to know, if we wanted to show you what would happen if you just left your limited participation and brought it to 429, that what's going to happen.
Roger, it's also fair to say that that doesn't assume any kind of healthcare costs going up in the next year either, right?
There's an escalator on there that we're using.
On the option one?
On that option one, yes. The escalator is already built in all the plans.
Okay.
So we're projecting what you're going to spend, and if you fund it at this level, we're still going to need we're going to need some additional help. We also took a look at an option 2, employee participation. If you added on 2018, 2019, if you add $75 per employee per month, brought your total contribution to $454 per employee per month, and then you adjusted the employee contributions, taking the expenses, the projected expenses, we would come out in the positive of $561,169.
How much more would the employee pay?
75.
Next slide.
The employer would be 75, which is, you'd be contributing approximately, combined about,
He says 50.
The employer's going to pay an additional $25 on top of the option 1. There's various increases on the employee part.
if we impacted the employer-employee combined, we'd raise approximately $4,458,703.
Now, if we were to pay 75 and the employee were to pay 25, where does that put us on the chart that you showed us earlier with comparable to the districts that are surrounding us?
In terms of, if we added the 75 and the 25,
So if we added $25 to the cost of
Employee contribution.
employee contribution, where does that put us versus surrounding districts?
well, it would take the 429, take you to 454.
Can you put that graph back up?
Sure.
You're talking about employer 75 and employee 25?
Yeah, the employee's gonna have to pay $25 more, right?
And
So I wanna know where that puts us versus surrounding districts.
Right there.
It would put us like right below Edinburgh, right below
So
Edinburgh.
he's talking about total
This
review.
one. But with that, as far as the.
No, we're good, we're good.
That one? They pay $25 more.
This one you're talking about, sir?
Yeah. Which would $77
No, but
versus
you don't.
81.
So yeah, maybe we need clarification. So yes, there's the slide for the employer part, but the $25, are you saying employee only, or
Yeah,
employee
well-
and spouse, employee and child, employee and family?
No. Right now, the way option 2 says is the employer's gonna pay
$75.
75 bucks, right?
And nothing for the employee. The
And
employee's
that-
not paying anything.
No. The one that says that the employee would pay $25 more,
It's,
right?
it's various, it's different
By
levels of
percentages.
increase depending on the
Yeah,
plan.
Okay, here's my question. If the employee has to pay $25 more, okay? If the employee has to pay 25, where does that put us versus the surrounding districts?
It's still in a competitive, it puts you right in the middle of the pack.
Okay.
It does.
We're not at PSJ's level.
No. You're still in the middle.
But we're close, we're much closer now. If you look at just the employee, that's right there. We would be at 454, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's just a little bit below what Edinburgh Consolidated. Yeah. And a little bit higher than La Jolla, just on the employer side.
I understand.
It would be a scaffold, right? Some would pay 25, some could be more depending on the plan. It wouldn't be a straight 25.
Yes.
Right, no, I'm not, that's why I don't want to get into that, because that gets us into the real weeds.
Right.
I'm talking about
Just simple math.
just the McAllen ISD, paying into the plan. And so we were just told it's $75 increase for the employer, which brings us to 454. And so Mr. Goddess said it puts us now right in the middle, but a little bit on the higher end to La Jolla, and just a few, $9 less than Edinburgh.
That's good.
But not anywhere close yet to PSJ.
I will tell you that $75 increase on the employer side is not something that our projected revenue for next year can sustain. No, first of all, we have a declining state funding. In addition to that, we are held to the 80% as part of our strategic plan that we have to maintain payroll costs within that 80%. We don't feel that we would be able to offer a very competitive compensation plan if we had to raise, because these costs are a component of that payroll cost, and that equates to another $3 million.
So the $75 increase that's being discussed here right now would actually mean it transfers over to a cost to the district of $3 million.
Yes.
Which would
The reoccurring.
Roger,
Reoccurring
just for clarification,
annual cost.
on this
Right.
$75 for the employer, it does include an employee increase as well
Yes,
in
sir.
that 75.
There's a,
In
yes.
addition.
In addition to that.
Yes.
It's not included in the
plus
75.
the employee.
Yeah, but for purposes of our conversation, we have to get past that first threshold.
Yes.
Is how much, $2 million infusion or $3 million addition coming out of somewhere in our funding source.
Yes.
And at this point, it really
Which-
comes out of our fund balance.
Well,
Either way.
and if it's part of the monthly contribution, then it would impact that 80%. It would cut into, that would mean, for $50, that would mean $2 million less that we have available for raises.
And last year, the raise we gave our staff, remind me how much did that cost?
It was about $4 million, roughly. 2.5% was $4 million.
Okay. And we chose to make that a dollar amount rather than a percentage amount. But it still equated to $4 million, which
It
total was
actually,
2.5%.
with the equity adjustments, it actually went up to about 3%. But the teachers received a flat amount in addition to some equity adjustments.
Right.
So that's why it wasn't a clean 2.5.
Gotcha.
And then 2.5% of the midpoint for the remaining staff. But that was roughly $4 million. And so in addition to that, in addition to those $4 million for the compensation, we also increased, because our plan was, this past year we increased the $50, so that was $2 million, so that's $6 million that we had to add to our payroll costs last year. So moving forward, it would roughly be the very same scenario. We would have to add another $6 million for another $50 increase to go up to the $429. And of course, depending on the level of compensation plan that we opt for, $3 to $4 million for that. So that's why another $25 to it just makes it even more challenging to meet that, especially with our state funding decreasing. One, because, as property values increase, the state decreases their share that they provide. And then two, because of our declining enrollment. So we also have to account for that reduction in revenue. And then the remaining revenue, it's about 217 million total. So 80% of that would be about 174 million that we have available for payroll costs to not break the 80%.
When you mentioned earlier, thank you for reminding us that it wasn't just the salary, we had some equity matters to address.
Yes, sir.
Are there any more planned for this next year?
Absolutely. We continue
still-
every single, yes. That is another part of our strategic plan.
Yes.
For a competitive market-based compensation plan to include equity adjustments, and that is always a consideration.
Okay. And what are we projecting there out of that?
Well, as far as,
About 0.5% of whatever,
typically, it's about another 0.5%.
of whatever we decided to do.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes. And, the first scenarios that we looked at, we're strongly looking at the teacher's scale, the pay scale. What we managed to do this past year with our compensation plan is we managed to move up one rank within our neighboring school districts as far as being competitive with salaries. Another thing that we did is we closed the gap. We saw that in teachers 20-plus years, we were below market within our school district peers, and we've closed that gap to where we're just about at the market median.
Is there a plan by the administration to finish closing that gap?
Yes, sir.
This next fiscal?
Absolutely.
Okay. But we should achieve that this next budget
Yes.
cycle, okay? Thank you.
That's the goal.
Thank you.
Lorena, so that option 2, the 75, additional 75 per employee, employer per month, that's definitely out of the question, right?
Yes.
Okay, so
It's not-
we'd have to be
Option
in
three.
that option, is there an option
There
3?
should be an option.
There is no.
There could be an option 3, which
But
would
there
be
needs to be.
a combination of option 1 and the second part of option 2.
Which is increasing to the employee the $25.
Yes.
And he didn't have it as a $25 amount, you have it as a 15%, 35%?
Well, we have it broke down as a percentage,
Yeah.
but there's an option 3, actually. We need the magic wand, come on, show it to us. Well, I can't, I'm not gonna present it to you because it's something that you have to take to the HR committee and let them take a look at it first.
Fair.
And so this is the only thing that we had, but I will justify it this way. $7.80 on your basic, employee only, on your basic plan, it's a drop in the bucket. On the high plan, $44.80 on the employee only, it's a drop in the bucket. You've got a $1.2 million deficit I showed you on the high plan. There's nothing you can do to try to attempt to catch up. You have the basic plan, and I'm being very direct with you. The employees on the basic plan are supplementing the employees on the high plan and the state plan. It goes through to say that, 20% of your population absorbs 80% of your benefits. That's just a fact. You have 46%, probably about 44% of the employees here don't seek medical treatment because they don't need it. We try to encourage them to go see a doctor once a year, and all of a sudden we end up with a new patient. So at the end of the day, I'm a little reluctant when the providers attempt to get these people in front of a doctor, because they'll end up on cholesterol medication, they'll end up borderline diabetics, they'll be on insulin. So I get a little concerned when, we're trying to create new patients when your plan is going into the red. Mind you, I don't want to stop people from going, but I'm just saying, there's a lot of encouragement to go see a doctor and see what can be physically wrong with you. So my suggestion would be, let's go back and reevaluate this game, and then let's attempt to not try to catch up, but actually break down the fields to where the plan is actually, where the cost is at, rather than the ones that are compliant.
And we have that such option as 3, but like I said, I prefer to present it to the committee first, the administration, before we make that recommendation to the entire board.
So you're basically saying higher increases on the, where it's being utilized more, on the high plan and
Well, if you
where the
take
deficits are.
Yeah, if you take 769 people are causing a $1.2 million loss, even with the revenue that they're bringing in, and then you have 2,300 people on your basic plan in the black, the only thing that you got $1.2 million in the black on the basic, and $1.2 million in the red on the high, and there's less population up here. You bring them both together, you're at 0, so you're actually going back down again. So there's just not enough money that I can encourage you to put in that the carriers and the providers aren't gonna take. I mean, it's just, there's no end in sight. I mean, it's really, it's like a tunnel. You just follow an endless tunnel. And the encouragement is, we have a new program that's gonna help you cut the cost, but it ain't gonna shorten up the tunnel.
Roger, I'm going to overrule you. We actually have a copy of what he's referring to, and if you want to see it, it's on the screen.
I think we need to.
It's on the screen.
We're at that
It doesn't
point.
show the next level adjustments, but it gives you a good picture of where the expenses are by plan. So what he's referring to is that there's certain plans, certain tiers that are definitely in the red while some are in the black. So what he
And
is...
it's for folks to see.
Sure. So what he is saying is that they could be a targeted effort to focus on those tiers versus a blanket percent by plan. Did I say that correctly?
You did, yeah. Actually, you did.
If you go back to the survey and you see that we're pretty much in line with most of them, but then when you go to the employee and family, that's where you see that there's at least a little bit more than a $200 difference per month. And if you look at those reds, the biggest reds are employee and family. Region 1 did a survey of, these kind of plans within their member districts. And what we found is that McAllen ISD had a disproportionately larger number of participants in the employee and family side. Well, I would venture to say because we have the best deal in town. So we're carrying a lot more.
Best for the employees and
Best for the
families,
employee and families.
not for the rest of the employees in the district as a whole.
And part of that audit that's being done right now is that to make sure that these are truly our dependents, this is truly a spouse and a dependent? Or, I mean, how, do we have a bunch of ghost people out there in the family? I say I have 5 kids and I really only have 2, but y'all, the district's insuring all them? Is that part of our audit?
The dependent audit, we haven't went down that road. We discussed it. Right now, it's a Blue Cross Blue Shield audit. That's what you're talking about, is the dependent audit. Make sure they're legitimate.
Or you have like
Yeah.
other extended
Of
family
course, we
members
have to
that
figure
you
out how much
include
that
as
audit
your
costs
household,
us,
but they don't live in
Yeah.
the household.
Third party.
Yeah, you can, and when you register and
Yeah,
you
you can
list them,
just-
you could list them.
Because
If
like,
there's
I
no-
have kids by different names and they didn't make me show anything. I mean,
Sorry.
But like my plan, I went to the county and at 26, my oldest son had to get taken off. Isn't that?
That's a law.
No,
But-
it's part of the rate.
No, but we're talking about
yeah, but I'm
probably
talking little ones, like I
minors,
have,
yeah.
Nevada,
Oh, okay.
Pena Liceda.
Yeah.
They're all on there. No one asked me to do, I mean, I don't have to actually show anything that
I see what you're saying.
It can happen.
Yeah,
Not watching it.
we've seen where employees have brought in their nephews and nieces as part of their health care, because it doesn't cost anything else after that. So you'll find 3 or 4 kids that are on the plan. Yes, it does happen. I'm not saying it's happening, but it does happen. But in this particular case, if you look at the loss ratios, they're mostly attached to the family rate, but only because the rates are so low that there's more people encouraged to come here and get insured here. And the risk exposures are a lot less there, or more to us, because there's more people participating.
I have a question, and I should know the answer. Like in the city of McAllen, once you leave there, you can go ahead and pay your monthly and stay on their insurance?
That's Cobra, but it's not theirs.
Oh, okay, that's not okay, we don't do that here. Once you leave the district, we don't,
Yeah,
you're
it's
done,
all-
okay.
Is there a way to track that? I mean, to audit that?
But it's gonna cost us more money too.
The eligibility?
And
The
then,
dependent audit.
Yes, that's on the table, something we want to consider after we get past this next step. The audit that's going on right now is strictly the administration and the claim servicing side, not the eligibility side. It's a separate scope of an audit, so we're definitely considering that as a next step.
That seems like that the vendor, that's something that they should be responsible for. I mean, that seems like something in the contract that they should guarantee that they're making sure that the people that are, I mean,
That really falls on us, to be
Okay.
perfectly honest with you, because we're controlling our employees and their enrollment. So we do have steps to verify that. For example, somebody gets married, we need to see a marriage certificate. There's some potential situations that we won't find out about. If somebody gets divorced and they don't tell us about it,
and then you're still paying.
potentially the divorced spouse can stay on the plan. So we would never know about that.
Well, what about every year when you sign your contract, you have to bring in, I mean, is that not legal to do? Like every year you have to bring in your marriage license, your kids' birth certificates? I mean,
It's
just every
legal.
year.
It's legal. It's just cumbersome
No?
because a lot of people get upset because I don't know where my marriage license is at.
Well, but once it's in the system, but once it's, but once it's in, okay, well, you're, I mean, I guess it would be great. But I mean, to send my kid to school, I have to send all sorts of stuff, information in, your house bill. I mean, you could bring your electricity bill, is your spouse's name on it? I mean, I would think there's gray area where you could say.
Actually, the easiest one that I've found is the tax return.
There you go.
Because if everybody's got to be on there that you're claiming. So, and people, for some reason or other, nobody, I don't care. I mean, I'll give a copy of it. But there's some people where they fabricate their dependents, and those are the ones that cause the loudest noise. So we always know we can target those by just saying, okay, well, don't bring it in, but now I need to see copies of everybody's birth certificate. And that changes the whole game.
I certainly like depending on what we did at the big bank there in New Orleans. It causes a lot of ruckus, especially for you board members. We get a lot of calls complaining, where's my marriage certificate? I heard it from the CFO there at the bank, and he kind of blew up on me one day in front of the CEO. But so they don't know where their stuff is. Sometimes it's the tax returns, but maybe there's a divorce decree that says I get to claim it for tax purposes, but you have to provide medical coverage or some things like that. But it's just a matter of show me the documents. Show me. But we had a third party do it, so that way, if you will, the district in this case would be out of the picture, so it's independent. I'm not spying on you. I'm not looking at your
But
tax
you're right in
returns
the
and all that
divorces though, because a lot of time the divorces, you have to take medical,
Yeah.
Right.
So it does get kind of here, and I promise you, you'll get some calls, but we need to do it to make sure we're only insuring those who should be insured.
Yeah, because that's the part in the red.
Now, we're looking at this document, which
Not that one.
is not that one.
Go back to the-
But this one here, the one that, and for purposes of, at this point, it's not been recommended to administration. Mr. Silva and Mr. Miller haven't had a chance to dissect it, digest it, or make any recommendation, right? So it's just for purposes of our information and some discussion.
Yes, sir.
And set some preface maybe about what could be. So with that being said, I noticed there's the base, the high, and the state, which we've been talking about. I notice now there's an alternate plan there. Is that something that's being suggested, or that already exists?
No, that already exists. And I apologize. The alternate plan is something that has coexisted here in the districts for the last 25 years, I believe. And it was really for enrollment count only. So employees that are participating someplace else and working for the federal government, they get to participate in the alternate plan, so we get to count the entire population. But it's very limited benefits, doesn't have any extensive benefits. It's a per day while you're in the hospital, it has limited counts.
Okay, good. So in the scheme of things.
No, sir. The scheme of thing, it's first of all not a major medical plan, and the enrollment's very low. It's only for those employees that have coverage elsewhere. So that, as Mr. Garza mentioned, that allows us to keep track of them and budget for them as an employee. But at the same time, they still get a benefit. It's a reimbursable benefit on a schedule of benefits. So it's very little reimbursement to them. Definitely not a major medical plan.
Okay. So when I see that $491,000, is most of that coming out of the district? Is that fair to say?
That is fair.
Okay, good. All right. So as we're looking at this, and I know it's broad strokes and still hasn't been really, refined and analyzed. Are we looking at a real possibility of maybe moving down to only 2 plans and a hybrid and something very different?
That has not been it hasn't been in discussion. It's a possibility in the future. But remember, the negative numbers you see under the high plan will probably shift down to the base plan. And then, so you're going to.
Get less premium for much more
Exactly.
service. Okay. So really what we're talking about is figuring out a way to find revenue and manage cost and expenses through either coverages, co-pays, premium adjustments. Is that what we're mainly talking about?
Yes, sir. At some point, we're gonna have to make a conservative decision of whether we're going to fund the entire cost or we're going to make some type of middle ground adjustments. In the employee and spouse participation, the district funds approximately $429 per employee per month. That's the employee. The spousal rate is actually half of that. So you're doing some supplemental cost to that plan, but they're both the same risk factors. So you have to increase the contribution levels on the spouse to be able to make it affordable. Otherwise, the plan will continue to absorb that cost. And most of it's not coming from the employees, it comes from the spouse.
Gotcha. And the risk we're running here, and it has happened before, is that we go bankrupt in this plan.
You have safety guard or safety measures in place. However, at some point, if we do nothing, we're going to exhaust all our coverages.
In other words, there's no funds to pay losses and no way to manage it either, because we have to pay the Blue Cross and Blue Shield or whoever we use. So we have no way of paying the administrative part to it. So everything comes to a standstill in a general sense.
We have a fiduciary responsibility, the trustees do and we do, to ensure that we're contributing enough money to pay those expenses.
But that's the risk. I mean, we cannot sustain, from what I'm gathering from this conversation, $6 million per year. As it is right now, we only have 11 unassigned in the fund balance. We've already put some, we still need another 1,500 put in, just to take care of us through this year, right? And then we still haven't addressed salaries and benefits moving into next year, which means potentially another $6 million if we stay with what we did this past year. 2.5 plus a 0.5 for the adjustment and the infusion. Correct?
That's correct.
So, October is when we have to have made a decision what we do. So how soon does the administration have to get a proposal to the board so that if we decide we go out for considerations, requests, what are we looking at, June? Are we?
For consideration for.
In other words, if we cannot make the necessary adjustments with the current vendors that we have, right, and there's still concern, and I'm not saying there is, and we feel that we need to go out, when must the board make that decision and still make that October 1st and have the board enough time to consider the request coming, no, first the administration and the board to make a fair decision by October 1?
It's about a 3-month time frame to do the RFP and evaluation and take it to the board in contract negotiation.
So we're looking in June, which is about the time we have to approve our budget.
I think that's what we had
Well,
discussed.
that's the timeline we had discussed, that whether we're going in whatever direction, the June timeframe before we go to summer break, we should have everything kind of buttoned up. So that certainly by the beginning of the school year, everybody knows where we are, and implementation things, if necessary, can get started, all those kinds of things. And it's lined up with y'all's budget process also.
So, and that was my next question, is you're looking at it as a superintendent as this is part of that budget plan.
Yes,
so
sir.
It's really not, it's not really two separate, it's all part of the new budget. So we have to consider something.
Yes, sir.
To approve a budget, because it has to be balanced. Okay, thank you.
When you talked about consideration in changing, is changing vendors is gonna solve our problem?
I didn't sense that.
Well, let me put it this way. You're not gonna find a cure for cancer or diabetes by switching vendors. You may have other vendors with more aggressive contracts. You may have another network that approaches the providers differently. Remember if you recall the presentation, everybody has separate contracts.
Yeah.
So there are different pistons running. And same thing holds true with the pharmacy benefit manager. They have a separate contract with every single pharmacy. Some of them are in your favor, work in your favor, and some don't. The same holds true with the medical networks. Some of them will favor you, and some of them won't. I look at it this way, we just deliver numbers. They deliver, programs. But you can buy all the programs in the world. Once again, you're not going to find a cure for chronic heart disease. They don't have it. It just doesn't exist. So it's all about managing these individuals or steering them, if you will, to the facilities you want them to go.
Well, in the conversations we were having earlier, we were it looked like we were in the pharmaceutical side. We were looking and we wanted equity, wanted balance, consistent. I'm feel it needs to be also on the medical side. The contracts need to be the same, across the board, and it needs to be transparent. We need to understand and know so that we're making better decisions so that we can project forward and help our employees with making the best actionables when it comes to the funding, et cetera. So what I saw very beneficial in that pharmaceutical thing is that's what we were saying. So now I'm just transferring that same concept, and that's where I'm going by. I'm not saying we change vendors or anything, but we need to be telling the vendor we want to stay with that we want transparency and we want it to be equitable so that you don't have different ones or different agreements. And as I heard again on the pharmacy side, then maybe some of them we don't use on the medical side. That's all I'm trying to get at in the thought process out loud.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and that's a conversation like for example, we were talking with the pharmacy. We're upset because not all pharmacies are getting the same reimbursement. But nobody's saying, hey, we've saved $1.5 million, which to me, if I look at it as a business, that's the most important thing to me. Because the only way that I'm not gonna try to save us from being in the red is finding a way to save money. The same thing has to hold true, as we've all said, is we have to do that with all our vendors. So if our provider, is gonna guide us, so they've been our provider for 5 years, and they say that everything's in place. And I'm not, this happens everywhere, in every business. We have it in place, but it hasn't been enforced. Well, then whose fault is that? Is it our fault? And if it's our fault, well, shame on us. Because we've lacked the savings and the preventive measures that's been put in place, and look what's happened. Now we're in the red. There's a lot of factors on why we're in the red, and we're not going to get into that. But if tools are there, and this, whether it be Blue Cross, whoever, if they provide the tools, and either A, we don't utilize them, or B, they're not helping us utilize them, then those tools mean nothing. And you can switch all you want, and we're going to be in the same position until we change our mindset on how we do things. And that's just how I feel.
I feel though, like the mindset though, regardless of the plan, we have to figure out the dollars. I mean, we have some serious issues here, and we're gonna have to start charging employees more. And the employer can't, we can't afford anymore. We're gonna go bankrupt. If we keep doing what we're doing right now, regardless of who our vendor is, we will be bankrupt.
No doubt.
And so the employees have to start to they have to understand that if somehow we could show them if we weren't self-insured and we were fully insured, their premium would be double, triple what they're paying right now.
Okay.
If we go bankrupt, we will go fully insured and we won't be self-insured anymore. And instead of paying, their $50 deductible, it'll be a $300, their payment. So there needs to be some kind of explanation to the employees at some point, but we need to figure out immediately how to fix this. I mean, we can't, we can't keep going like this. We can't dip into the fund balance all the time. I mean, we have buildings, we have facilities we need to fix. We have things that we need to do with that money, and not keep shoving it back in to put a Band-Aid on a problem that's exploding. And when we wanted to close down Walgreens in January. Now we're in March, and now by the time it gets closed down, it's another 3 months out. I mean, it's 100,000 here, 100,000 here, 100,000 here, 100,000 here. Well,
It's $1 million.
it's $1 million. And we can't just sit here and say, okay, well, we'll do it again in a month, we'll meet again in a month. Okay, we'll go out in October. Okay, we'll start it. And I mean, what do you, Lorena, what do you think? I mean, I know you've got.
Well, first to address the question about Walgreens. The last I heard from this meeting was that the PBM was going to reach out to them one more time.
No.
I thought we were at the point, before we came to this meeting, we thought our recommendation was to cut ties.
Yeah,
at
no,
this point.
that's our recommendation today, was cut ties. They already went 1-2 times. Our recommendation today was,
Yes.
that's it, don't
I
ask
can
again.
tell you, the consensus of this board is cut ties.
Cut ties today.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we have our marching orders
That
on
may have been what they're saying, but that's not,
No.
we're the ones that have to make that decision.
Yeah.
Now, if it needs an actionable and a board, we'll put it on the next board meeting, but at this point, unless anybody sees any different, I agree with.
No, yeah,
what-
I mean,
yeah.
I think Larry, one time, when I first got on the board, explained to me when we were talking about, we all want this, what's best for our employees about, when you give someone a raise, that raise is not just that 1 year. That pay increases every year. So when you do that, you have to forecast that revenue is gonna continue to come. Well, that revenue is not
it's
coming.
not coming.
So when we forecast, so we go back at this. Back in the day, 5 years ago, we had $9 million.
In the fund balance.
In the fund balance, we never forecasted that we were gonna, that the medical bills were gonna skyrocket. That was never put in the picture. We never put that we weren't gonna increase anybody's premium, yet we gave out bonuses. And although it's great for the employee, look where we're at now. And so it's not, it's a very difficult decision because I don't want to Band-Aid it for 1 year. This is something that we have to forecast for the next 5 years. And we all know these prices are going to increase. And, what good does it do to give our employees a 1% increase when you're going to increase the insurance premium
Exactly.
3%? Well, then it's not an increase.
Right.
I mean, let's all be real with each other here, and that not sound good in one area, but
transparent.
yeah, I mean, and
We
we're all
gotta
in
be
this,
transparent.
we're all in this together. I mean, the employees have to know that if they get on the website tonight, and they get on Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they try to get their own premium, they're like, I'm sticking with McAllen ISD. I'm telling you, I have a pre-existing condition. I paid $1,700 a month for my wife, my 2 kids, and myself. So, even as a small business owner, I was forced to have to go get a job just to be insured. And so that's just the reality. Now, in a perfect world, yeah, give them, let's keep everything the way it is. And with the enrollment, there's a big picture, and that's why Lorena's saying, with employment, with the enrollment not increasing, state funding decreasing, all these factors have to play a role when we make our decision. That's just the reality. It's not the most popular decision, but.
No,
If
but
it-
it's
if it's all right with y'all, maybe we skip page number 11, because
Yeah.
it's going to say the same things that American Healthcare and Blue Cross said, you've got a problem with high claimants. I was going to actually give a real pretty detail about it, but I heard theirs, and I said, I'm not going to repeat it tonight.
What they said.
They said it better. Let's look at some optional corrective actions, and these are just suggestions now. This is not, this might, well, let me back up a little. This will help you plan. The first one is, I'm going to recommend that you adjust the employee contribution. Not employee only, but the employee tiers that we were seeing earlier. There's a formula that we have that will give you the correct funding figures, and it limits the employer participation as well. So there'll be some offset, if you will. So we'll bring that back. I know we placed a number of $1.4 million there as the employee portion of it, but there's actually an adjustment there that will increase that. The employer contribution, again, we're gonna have to probably limit that because of the amount of, that we're requesting. There's gonna be some plan design changes. You heard that from Blue Cross. You'll probably hear it from me as well. You're gonna hear it from me as well. There's gonna be some professional copay adjustments, emergency room copay adjustments. There's going to be some adjustments to, or cap some of the the district participation in some of the
Excuse me,
benefits.
Mr. Garcia,
Yes,
we're
sir.
saying, this is a suggestion, we don't know if it's gonna be, right?
Exactly,
We
that's
don't know if
correct.
it's gonna be, this is what you're recommending or suggesting at this time.
These are just appointments that have saved the district a considerable amount of money.
Just a verbiage, I just don't.
Oh, no, no, this is a good discussion.
Well, I was going to interrupt them. because- Yes, I think Mr. Miller said it best, that there's not one fix.
Right.
So everything should be on the table. Here are some things we discussed that definitely we need to develop and put some dollar figures to them so that we can decide, dollars, disruption, we're all in, or you know what, that one, we can leave, phase it in next year. That kind of approach to get us where we need to be. So yes, we've discussed these, and I'm comfortable that these definitely should be on the table, but there's others, and I'll let Mr. Garza speak to those as well.
Sure,
And
you
what
have,
we're not seeing on this chart, because it's probably a little bit bigger, and I'm sorry I made you make it bigger, but it does say optional corrective actions.
yes, sir.
So these are not decided yet. I'm sorry, Mr.
No, no,
Garcia.
that's right, no, I appreciate a lot of discussion. We have, for example, the deductible carryover features under your current structure. Back in the 90s, that was one fantastic feature everybody liked because they could complete their, or contribute to their deductibles in the last quarter of the year and then carry them over to the new year. Well, that's no longer a feature, in my opinion. Now it's a liability. So now you're carrying liability from the end of the year into another new year, plan year.
So eliminate them.
So now especially in a stretch like we're having today, the last thing you want to do is give an employee credit for something that wasn't accomplished in the calendar year. So we want to adjust that hopefully to 1/1 to end at 12/31. It's going to also impact your maximum out-of-pocket expense under the Affordable Care Act. The cap is $7,150. Is going to have an impact on that as well. So it'll keep you from having to start paying 100% right off the bat.
That's easy.
The other item is the limitation of the 90-day RX and just keep it to generics only. I offered that suggestion because we're looking at a lot of the non-formulary brand name and specialty drugs that are coming out. And the costs are just too high for the district to advance that money to an employee and then run the risk that the employee may switch drugs either on the 38th day or the 60th day, and then they have to throw away the remainder. So it's going to contain the loss on spoilage. It's also going to contain, it would put everybody back on 30 days, and it eliminates that free $45 copay that you can put back to the insurance.
Now, this 90-day prescription, I have a medical condition and so I'm going to be on that medication for the rest. Do we provide this other than a prolonged time, or anybody could get a 90-day for prescription for any medication right now?
You can more or
See,
less.
for us, it's only, you have to go through a medical, and it has to be a medical condition that it's always, you're going to have it, so. You see what I'm getting at?
Maintenance drugs.
Maintenance drugs.
Maintenance drugs, yeah. And most of them are 90-day scripts. So if you go to your pharmacist and you have a 90-day script, will only cap you out at 30 days.
Because it's not a maintenance drug at that
Well,
point.
no, even if it's a maintenance
Even
drug.
if it's a maintenance.
So it'll give you 30 days and you have to pay a copay. And then you go back and you get your other 30 days, it'll be another copay.
So you're proposing that we no longer have any 90-day prescription drugs?
I'm suggesting that.
Generic only.
Generic, only on generics. If you have generics,
You can get your 90 days.
You can get 90 days, you can get 180. In fact, you can get 2 years if you want. I mean, it's a drop in the bucket compared to what we're paying on the non-formulary and brand name drugs.
Okay.
Now this one, just to add to that, it'll be difficult to quantify the savings that he's referring to because spoilage, we have no way of monitoring for spoilage.
Right.
However, the potential if, on a specialty drug, if there is spoilage, if it was the wrong drug, it didn't work for somebody, the cost of those are very high. So, that's why he's proposing only the brand and specialty, but the generic, which could be a few dollars per prescription, a few $20, $30. Okay, we run the risk, and it leaves the convenience to the employees that they can have it for about 90 days and save one copay. Because right now it's structured where on a 90-day prescription, you only pay 2 copays versus 3. So it's a savings and an incentive for them to get it at 90 days.
And to be generic.
And they'd be the generic, correct, yes, sir.
Now-
Based on his recommendation.
I'm sorry. If, earlier we had a conversation that there may be some individuals, so they would still be able to appeal this and maybe get a brand for the 90 days? Or you're figuring there's no appeal in this regard?
No, this is just an elimination of the 90-day, if we take a look at our costs, there's some cases where you're paying $2,800 for 90 days. Where if you take it on 30 days, it's probably about $700 for the 30-day script. So if I'm taking the risk, I'm advancing the money to the employee to purchase those prescription drugs when your fund balance is actually taking a hit. So quite frankly, the way I look at it, it's kind of like loaning out $100 that you don't have. So it's just reducing your exposure. Then on top of that, if the employee should switch his drugs, then I don't have to worry about the spoilers getting thrown away. So, and that comes into play when your drugs are at $5,000 or $6,000 for a 90-day. So it's just helping contain some of the exposure that we're taking. And the last but not least is cost containment features. And you heard from Blue Cross redirecting utilization to lower cost providers. Their idea is, you hire a benefit advisor and then you encourage them to go there with incentives. Well, the incentives is giving them back money that I don't have. So the only difference I have, I'm not disagreeing with them, but I'm just saying is we can actually go directly to the providers, engage in a direct agreement with them, and start with the wellness program and offer it to employees. If they go there, they're going to get the wellness benefits paid or the wellness services paid. If they go anywhere else, they're going to have to pay the deductible and the co-insurance amounts. We go to specialty clinics as well. We engage them directly with the district and then have them reimbursed either at a rate of 100%, but at a competitive price rather than a insurance price.
Gotcha.
The other item that we can do, and this would probably eliminate any changes to your plan, is go strictly to reference-based pricing and select 2 hospitals as your safe harbor hospitals. And that will then...
That might be a problem though from an HR standpoint. I mean, if I've been seeing a doctor forever and he only practices at a certain hospital, now you're saying I can't go to him?
Oh, no, you can go there. You can go anywhere you want. There's just 2 facilities that you won't renegotiate the price. The other facilities, they'll have to renegotiate the price, and you're probably paying closer to the Medicare benchmark price with no balance billing.
Oh, okay.
So actually, you can say,
Okay.
So this is along the lines of
Yeah.
of what you mentioned earlier,
Yeah.
that we set the parameter.
We set it,
and
yeah. You
if you
play
want to
ball, you don't.
participate, you participate. I mentioned this during the workshop,
Yeah.
when we had a workshop before. I've researched more on it. It's maybe not so common for public systems, but
Yeah.
it's out there. I mean, it's a concept that's used and it can be successful. But the one thing that we have to be very aware of is that the employee has to be very engaged in this process because it's no longer a preferred provider organization. You heard Ms. Sosa mention that providers cannot balance bill under this model. Currently, our PPO arrangement, they get reimbursed whatever the contract says. After that, they get their co-insurance from the employee. They cannot bill for anything above those charges. In a reference-based model, there is the risk that they're going to take our dollar figure that we agreed on. They're going to take it, but then they say, there's still a $5,000 balance here that the plan didn't pay me,
They're gonna go to the
and they
employer.
bill it to the employee.
Yeah.
Now, all of these providers, the ones I've been able to speak to, say they have processes and procedures in place to be the advocates of our employees to make sure that that process is minimized. They step in, they talk to them, they talk to the hospitals, they negotiate on their behalf. But we have to be aware that that model is definitely potentially more disruptive. Potentially a much greater savings, and it puts everybody on the same playing field. But definitely, we will not have the safeguards of a PPO model where they can't balance bills.
They're telling you that, and they're also making $1 million off of this.
Let's not forget that.
Not doing it for free.
So
Not doing it
those
for
are some of the
free.
options. There's a lot of things you can do to the plan to make it affordable, keep it affordable. That was one of the options, reference-based pricing. We can do the direct agreements. There's a lot of moving parts out there that we can do, and we haven't gotten back with the rates, but we'll get back with you after we meet with the HR committee and let them review them first. But aside from that, do y'all have any questions? I know it's spring break and I don't want to keep y'all from,
Yeah, Debbie will call you tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't, unfortunately, I work next week, so I don't get but anyway, you mentioned just a moment ago, these are the things that we can do. Now, how much is driven by our current agreement with the vendors that we just met with? And how much of it is, in your case, able to do? So how does that dynamics play? And these suggestions here, that, is it that since it's our plan and you're our consultant in that, we can make some of these fine tuning with Mr. Silva and Mr. Miller and obviously the superintendent without, and then they just administer whatever we've done? Is that's the thought process?
the plan design changes, co-insurance, I'm sorry.
No, I was just nodding my head that yes, from what I'm seeing here in this list, all of these we can drive. It's in our control. We can go to the administrators and say, this is what we'd like to do and expect them to do it. The reference-based pricing, on the other hand, that one is a different model. So if you want to go down that road, it's probably not something that we could use. We could use the same TPA for.
And we'd have to go out for that.
Yes, sir.
They don't play in there.
Yes, sir. They have their own, and that's probably, I should mention, they have their own version of reference-based pricing models, but it's, and not that it's a bad approach, they limit it to providers, for example, imaging. They might target imaging and say, okay, McAllen ISD, if you want to do reference-based pricing, here's the imaging provider that we negotiated this great rate for you. Develop your plan to steer them there, and this 1, 2, or 3 providers are going to get reimbursed this much. If your employees go elsewhere, here's their benefits. And again, we would have say in what those benefits are, but it's on that scale. Mr. Gassa's, at least more aggressive opportunity is the hospital system. And that, in speaking to Blue Cross, they said that they're not prepared to do that for us because they have contracts with them, and they can't be doing that and still expect them all to participate in their network. So they have some concerns about helping us with that part of it.
See, my thought process is, as we continue to explore, is that we discuss and we think about what we're wanting to do based on your recommendations and thought processes to get us the best possible outcome so that we not cast the cost burden any higher than we have to our employees, but also not being absorbed by the district. So I think that's the way that we should discuss it, is what plans, etc. And then that will tell us should we have to go out or not. Because if we start being concerned about preserving relationships with vendors, I think we're putting things in the wrong order. I want to work with anyone, and especially those that provide us the best benefit and services, and I'm sure they have, and we've been fine up to now. But now we're in a critical point, and I think we have to look at what is it that we're talking about, including your suggestions, and then see, can you do it with the current providers? If they say no, then I think it's a natural progression. You have to go out for requests. But if we're trying to preserve a, quote, relationship, and they're not willing to work with us, and we need these components in order to save costs for both ourselves and our employees, then I think we're missing the boat.
On the cost containment features, when you have the...
Missing the opportunity, I'm sorry.
No. When you have the wellness and specialty clinics, I know right now there's a big push with a lot of employees are going to that med clinic on Dove, and it's a huge amount, and insurance is covering it, even though they don't have a prescription to go there. They're not diagnosed as obese, so they're not going there. Would that be something that we would go to our vendor and say, cut that out? Or, and they can only go there if they have a prescription?
No, you can cut it out, but it's always, any adjustment that you make on our policy costs us money.
What do you mean?
So you tell them, correct me if I'm wrong, this is no longer covered, we want you to tweak this on our plan, it costs us money to do that.
Currently, no. In our contract, we have the right to go to them and tweak our benefits.
I thought I was told by you.
Not as far as that's concerned. The programs they did mention about the benefit advisor, I'm not
That's
sure.
their stuff.
I'm not sure if
Yeah.
they made that clear enough. Those come at a cost.
Yeah.
They're not gonna just say, here's your benefit advisor.
Right.
They're saying, we can help you with the benefit advisor, here's the cost.
Right.
So those, if we were to decide to pursue them with them, come at a cost. Things like that, benefit plan changes, that they don't. Now, that particular example, I've already addressed it with them, and now they're having trouble, as the gentleman said, figuring out how to automate it moving forward. But right now, all those claims are stopping, and they're not getting paid. Until that manual process figures out that, okay, that was a legitimate
Yeah.
service, it's within our plan.
Yeah, a doctor sent you there, told you,
Move
right.
forward.
You didn't
If
just
it's
go
not,
there, because, yeah.
then it's gonna get denied. Yeah, so that was one where they couldn't figure out an automated process yet, but they assured me that they're being stopped on a manual process.
And then speak to, I know everyone wants to go real quick, but speak to what you were talking about.
One question.
Sorry.
Larry wants to talk to me.
Well, because I have a friend and she was getting all
You have a
those.
friend.
Shut up. She was getting all those specialty drugs, and she would take them and they weren't working, and it's because she had to do a DNA test to figure out how her body was consuming them. It turns out that she was absorbing them too quickly, and so when they finally figured that out, but it took many prescriptions to figure out what was. So that's something. Is that something we could tell
Absolutely.
the vendor too? We want that kind of testing.
Hey, what's your phone number? I need some drugs.
She has a lot left over. So that's something too that we could go back and say.
Yes, and I see Brett still, maybe I'll put him on the spot.
No.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we already have that in place for our pharmacy program. Where certain drugs that have a specific genetic marker that
Yeah.
makes them the most appropriate.
Yeah.
Has a PA.
Larry, were you gonna ask a question?
Over 95% of all specialty patients have a PA requirement and require lab work. That should have indicated this
That
way
way.
before. However, it sounds like she was probably very unique in the sense that there was some absorption issues.
Yeah, was it?
and
Yeah.
maybe there was some false positives, and some, even the lab work may not even be correct, and that's just something you can't do a lot about. But I will mention also with specialty medications, the plan does have only a 30-day limit. You can't get a 90-day of that anyways, so that's already in place. So, just wanted to
My
make sure
flight leaves
everybody
in
knew that
15
as well.
With that being said, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. For our staff and employees, sorry we kept you so late. Enjoy your spring break, be safe. I move that we adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Salazar, we have a second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Enjoy your spring break. Thank you all. We adjourn at 7:27.
Sorry, that was Steve.
We didn't hear. There you go.